morning, and welcome to the August 23rd Stearns County Board of Commissioners meeting. Let the record show all county commissioners are present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Freedom.
All right. Okay, next item is approval of the agenda. I don't think we have any add-ons today, so everyone should have had time to look over the agenda. So could we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mergen. Any further discussion?
Clark. One of us.
We're going to flip a coin?
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is public access forum. Anyone wishing to speak in front of the county board today, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address. Each person will be limited to 3 to 4 minutes, and the county board will not engage in discussion, but refer any matters to the appropriate county department. And a citizen may only speak at the public access forum once a month. So is there anyone here wishing to speak at the public access forum?
And something not on the agenda.
And it has to not be on today's agenda. So if so, whoever is first, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address.
Go ahead.
My name is Susan Dahl. Address is Bentry Drive, St. Cloud, Minnesota. I've been observing things from a back seat, and today I felt compelled to come and speak to you regarding why we are here. We being you, the county commission, and us, the citizens of Stearns County. And what it comes to is that you took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the Republic of the United States of America, the state of Minnesota, and you also took an oath for the Stearns County mission statement. And that's what I'd like to speak to. The Stearns County mission statement states that you will provide exceptional public service to assure a safe, healthy, vibrant county for all. At this point in time, I'm feeling that citizens, their voices are either being silenced or they're being ignored by the board. The second component is to assure a safe community here in Stearns County. And to address that, we have concerns about the voting situation, and again, voices are being silenced. To address the health component of the mission statement, currently we have reading materials in our public libraries that are not acceptable. And again, that needs to be examined. As far as a vibrant community, how can that exist when we have county commissioners walking out of public meetings with their backs turned to the citizens of Stearns County? At this time, I believe a county for all needs to be reexamined. And I would ask that the board would dig deep, find their moral compass, and begin to listen to and engage with the citizens of Stearns County. And the appropriate department for this to be sent to is you, the board. And so I would ask that you would start to engage with the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Virgil Fuchs, Belgrade, Minnesota. I'm here to give you information and examples of what I've been going through with the North Fork Crow River watershed. For 20 years, I've got a ditch number 37, which goes through my farm. For 20 years, I've been asking to have the ditch completed to the river. That has not been happening. I bought that farm in 1981, and since that time, in the late 80s, early 90s, the people running the watershed or the county was in charge of it until about the 90s. Alan Koseski was the manager at the watershed, and they petitioned to repair and bring the ditch up to standards. And then they withdrew their petition in 1986 is when they presented that petition. In the late 80s, they withdrew that petition because their petition didn't represent what they wanted. They wanted to lower that ditch beyond original depth. So they released their petition. The rest of us got charged for the engineering costs that they accrued during that time. And so they went ahead and lowered the culvert on 443. That's a township road. Beyond my land, going west, 3.5 feet, and I have proof of that happening. Outside of the record, there is no record of that happening. Those days, they was really loose. And I was there when they did it, so I am a witness to that happening. I've got proof of that happening. Illegally, there was never a hearings in any respect to that happening. Now we're gonna fast forward to 2020, and the watershed now increased the diameter of this watershed and added X number of acres towards beyond Bruton. And now they redetermine the benefits to all the farmers. My redetermined benefits are $95,000. $95,000. And I do have, this is just the beginning of my, I got my 2 minutes. I cannot explain 20 years of frustration going through meetings and asking to have the ditch repaired for my benefits. Anyway, what they're doing now is actually flooding my farm. In the spring, I've got photos in the fall where there's water in the cornfield. We rent our land to other farmers, and I lost my renter 3 years ago. He says, I can't farm this. He couldn't plow it. He couldn't do anything. Okay, so I
have to wrap it up, Virgil.
Yeah, I know. I save you. I've been ridiculed and harassed at these meetings. Steve, you were there, by the manager. And so anyway, I had to hire an attorney for the appeal. And Chris, the manager there, rejected my appeal on basis of a 4.03 ruling, which didn't apply in this case. I took this to the Supreme Court. I sued you guys, and I won. If you're responsible for the watershed, you got sued. Right here it is. I'm going to give you the ruling came out on April 18, 2022, and where...
Virgil, you have to wrap it up.
Pardon?
Okay, you have to wrap it up, Virgil. You have to wrap it up because we have more.
Right.
I will give him my 3 minutes.
Well, we can't do
get to
that.
do that.
That's
Hey,
not.
She's the owner.
Yeah.
Go tell him what.
Well.
Anyway, this has caused stress on my family and myself. Anybody got any medical knowledge? I have a SMA. Anybody know what that is? Superior mesenteric artery. That is caused by stress. And last June 24th, I had surgery at the University of Minnesota, where they went through my arm, but relieved the stress on my artery because I lost so much weight that the artery got compacted and I couldn't eat anymore. So anybody got medical, this is caused, but I would like to have the manager replaced. The courts send me back to the district. Now I'm getting thrown back into the fire. I need the
Virgil.
manager replaced, and I'm requesting that at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Virgil.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Persky,
which number is that?
37. And that's a separate government body, too.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Peter Wilson. I live at 1108 Celebration Drive, Sartell, Minnesota. I want to say, first I wanted to thank the county attorney for looking into an election issue that I brought forward with another gentleman in 2018. I thought it was handled extremely professionally. And a very gracious amount of time was extended to us. At that point, we had extraordinarily good documentation. I was very disappointed with the Stearns County Sheriff's Department and how they looked at it. But again, I'll give the attorneys folks an A, the other folks a incomplete, because I was not on the phone, and my associate is a bit of a hothead. So I'm not sure how that actually ended, but I let it sit. Now, as a proud member of the John Birch Society since 1981, I'm also an enthusiastic supporter of law enforcement, and I understand how that might happen. Going forward, I have also want to talk on the recent things. I've been an election judge in 2020 in the general, the recent Sartell special election, and the recent primary, and I thought those went quite well. Again, a compliment. And the recent event that took place with the recount. Things I'm greatly concerned on are not turning on the cast vote record system so that records are kept. I find any excuse not to do that inadequate and recommend replacement of anyone at a high level who is not willing to do that. When I have heard of or understand the costs involved, it seems shockingly low in any normal company that audits or investigates what goes on, 3 or 4% potential cost. And I'm not sure about that because, again, a lot of that is determined by how you negotiate things, having seen that in many aspects of my life. What is sometimes a cost, other times is extended for free if you ask for it. So, again, that's that's something. The other little things I want to touch on is auditing the dead voter rolls, how many of the people are on there that shouldn't be, how many have moved out of the area. I'm not saying it isn't happening. The question is it has to be extremely transparent. And another thing I think is in great need is auditing of out-of-state type individuals, which would be the local colleges or universities, St. Cloud State, St. Ben's, St. John's, are people voting in both, where they might be from Ohio and here. I'm not sure there is a good tracking or any tracking, and I would audit that. And let us hope that we get an auditor and a Secretary of State in this wonderful state that will do those things. Again, some of the one other comment, I guess, or two in wrapping this up is going forward, I intend to come here more often. I've been in many other commitments, but I will be talking about sustainability goals. We in Sartell have been under the iron curtain, or behind the iron curtain and the iron fist of the sustainability goals and the globalist agenda of Agenda 21, which came in a past mayor of our city. And also some of the other things I also want to look into, the COVID death certificates. I have great concern that those are accurate or inaccurate, and as such, there may have been many, many felonies committed by some of our local medical facilities, and I will develop that later. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please maybe hold any clapping and stuff down, please? Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Mary Kay Hooney, 9850 Jenny Lane, St. Joseph. I have a couple items I'm going to talk about. The one thing I want to say about our ballots is they are our ballots. They are our ballots. There you go. Thank you. Our taxes paid for those ballots. There's no reason for you not to keep them. We need to keep them so we can investigate more on our elections. Today, you will be going over the 2023 budget with Karen Punsack, the Great River Regional Library Executive Director. You were handed this morning information on an event that took place April 9th, 2022, which was titled Drag Story Time. This event had drag queen readers named Park and Ride and a dude named Chad. It specified that all ages are welcomed. You also receive portions of a book which can be found in the juvenile section of the Great River Regional Library, named It's Perfectly Normal. This book, in its pornographic material, states it is for ages 10 and up. I would like to hear you address both these issues when you plan to spend my tax dollars for the library's 2023 budget. Lastly, and this is just a picture in that book. Nobody wants to see that? That is what we're showing our children. Also, I'm going to mention a little bit about the Endangered Species Act, which is a part of the LCCMR, which I already spoke about one other time. This is a Congressman, Richard Pombo from California. It is no secret the ESA has been used by extremists to restrict, seize, and devalue private property rights, as well as halt important government projects. In fact, this is what most green obstructionist groups relish most about the act. Whatever intentions were behind the ESA when it was conceived in 1973 are of little consequence. Intended results mean nothing when compared to actual results. The ESA exists solely as a land use and power tool whereby radical environmentalists and their allies in government can take property and force their whims on the public. As Representative Pombo points out, the ESA has become the preeminent law of the land. In its implementation, it takes precedent over all else. Included in that all else is common sense. The Endangered Species Act punishes property owners for fostering an environment that is suitable for species habitation. You read that right. The ESA is so backwards that it creates a perverse incentive for landowners to actually rid their property of species and habitat for fear of government confiscation of their land or property rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at today's public access forum?
My name is Mark Morris. My address is 671 Roberts Road, apartment 204. Good morning, Commissioners. I was at the canvassing board meeting on August 11th at noon, where the election was certified for Stearns County. There seems to be a couple of issues I would like to address and get the answers to. At the June 28th, 2022 Commissioners meeting, the board passed a motion to have two commissioners both be present at the election canvassing board. One of the commissioners was not there. Instead, Randy Schreifels had someone appointed as a staff member in his place. The audience questioned why one of the commissioners was not there and what the process is just to appoint a staff person to sit in his place. The audience did not get a straight answer when we questioned the issue. Commissioner Clark, she got up and left left the room when someone asked her a question. In fact, Randy Schreifels told me there's a statue, but I cannot find anything. I felt ignored and would like to know how the process works. Also at the June 28th Commissioners meeting, both Auditor Randy Schreifels and Laura Laudenbach said that 3 precincts would be chosen to do a hand count, which would be random. They were not. In fact, when a canvassing board member asked for certain precinct to be canvassed, Randy Schreifels actually said, how about Paynesville? They were not chosen randomly. I want to know why. I would like some clarity on these issues, please, and do not destroy the 2020 ballots, as it is my personal property. Thank you for your time today, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have no problem responding to that.
Yeah, Joe.
I just want to know that my wife had a personal friend, childhood friend that passed away, and she was also a friend of mine at high school. And I did the courteous thing, and I attended that funeral because my wife needed me there. Okay?
But they knew for 3 days before he would be gone.
You know, we'll maybe have to create an alternate if we can possibly do that in the future. Would that be something?
I couldn't do it. I'm on the ballot. I can explain the statute.
Go ahead, Randy.
I did talk to Mark afterwards and explain this to him, but so the options is, of course, we'd love the commissioners to be present, but sometimes they can't because of whatever personal reasons they have. So then the options is a commissioner can find somebody to replace them, or if they don't, then it's up to me to find somebody to replace them. So that's what I did. And as far as the random selections relates to picking the precincts that'll be recounted for the post-election review. So the canvassing board at the general election canvassing board will randomly select 3 precincts to recount for the post-election review. For the canvassing board, what precincts they look at is totally up to the canvassing board. If they like to do it randomly, they can. If they have some that they would like to look at because they have concerns or they would like to look at it for whatever reason, that's up to the canvassing board to decide.
Okay. Thanks, Randy. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak at the Public Access Forum on any item not on today's agenda? Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good morning, Chairman. I'm Linda Thielen, 3020 19th Street South in St. Cloud. I did not plan on talking today, but things have gotten out of control, I feel, in this county with the way things have been handled. We have not been listened to. Mr. Lenzmeyer was with us on Thursday night. It was a voting integrity forum, and it was very interesting. I learned things I didn't know. It's advised that all of you attend. I know that Mr. Persky, listening to him on video the other day, said, or from the last meeting, said, yes, and people believe that there are aliens leading our country and our world. No, Mr. Persky, we do not believe that, but we do believe that the election was stolen from us, not from anybody else. There have been many, many things that have been proved, and I don't know if any of you have listened to it, but the media is covering everything up, and things will come out. By the grace of God, things will come out. I would like the election ballots, all the tapes from the machines, saved, so we can do something about it. I also want to address the library. The book that Sandy gave you, pages of the book, is pornography. It's total, complete pornography. And for a 10-year-old to look at that, I remember babysitting and finding in the bathroom in one of the places, Penthouse magazine. I was very young, I was 12. I was devastated. I couldn't believe things like that were out there. A child is a child. At 10 years old, they shouldn't be looking at pictures of men on men, women on women, and sexual acts. They shouldn't be. They should be playing outside. They should be building. Is it not
Something just died. It was working.
I have a loud voice. I don't need this. So, if that needs to be in our library, it should be in the adult section so parents can take it out and explain things to their children, not where children can grab a book and go, oh, look at this. What is this? Why is this? At 10 years old, at 2 years old, at 5 years old. If they're in that library and they come upon that book, it's disgusting. Also, my tax money being used for transvestites, story hour at our library, I'm sorry, it's disgusting. And it's not moral. There's nothing moral about it. Things like that are to be left to parents to explain. It's not your job. It's not the library's job. It should be put in the adult section, not in the children's section. And I'm asking you to please address these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak at today's public access forum? Anyone else? Not seeing anyone else. Thanks everyone for coming in and expressing your opinions. Next up, we have the consent agenda. We're either looking for a motion or is anyone looking to pull anything out of today's consent agenda? I believe there's 17 items. Randy?
Just a note on items 4 and 5. It said contingent upon the sheriff approval, and they have given that approval, so we can remove that part of it.
Okay, so they're all ready to go.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull number 10 for discussion.
Okay, number 10 relates to the amendment to the ordinance. Do we want to, let's see, do we have, is that environmental services? So you want to put that?
We can put it there or we can take it out after.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
All right, so we'll pull item 10 and maybe discuss it right after if that's appropriate. Anyone else? If not, can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda, pulling item number 10?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Do we have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Mergen. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 10 is authorized public hearing for Tuesday, September 27th.
Right.
To discuss the amendment to ordinance number 439.
Okay. First of all, Shelley, I've got a couple of questions. I'm just concerned about policy in that we're going to make a discussion and have a public hearing on an ordinance change. And typically, and my past experience in government has been when we do an ordinance change, the ordinance change is not specific to one item or one property. And it seems that this ordinance change is being very specific to that. And so we shouldn't necessarily be catering to one particular individual or one particular incident, but how the ordinance should be applied across the county.
I think that's what is going to happen, right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, that's exactly what's going to happen. One of the reasons that we wanted to make sure we had full review of that text amendment request is to make sure that we are meeting that standard so that we understand that this would apply across the county to any public or private access request. So essentially controlled access change to the ordinance would apply across the county. So there has been significant change in that text amendment from staff looking at it, making sure we meet the DNR standard, and then that will be discussed as well as information as to why the standard was taken out of the ordinance originally. So there's some additional information that will be provided at the public hearing. But it is process-wise, the Planning Commission is the review body, and by ordinance, the county board is the body that reviews the ordinance and then makes a decision on that ordinance. Whether you choose to amend the text all as provided or a portion of it will be your decision after the public hearing.
Okay. And just that I noticed there's a bit of a contradiction in it too. You know, it asks for passive use, but then it is requesting for a structure down there. And again, you're just being specific about a structure on the property. And I think it's contrary also to a ordinance that means we have to have a 911 designation for a property if you're going to have a structure on that. So there are a good number of things that need to be worked on that as well. And also if it's going to be used for picnicking, that there might have to be trash receptacles in a public restroom or a type of restroom. So anyway, we'll get to that.
So we will certainly have that all at the public hearing. Looks like we have expect a date to be set for September 27th. That will all be a part of the packet. That packet will go online. We are sending that out to all the townships so that the townships receive their notice. And it will also be noticed in the Cold Spring Record as our paper of record.
Good. Good. Okay. And can we get a motion to set that public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Mergen, any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Roll call.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Persky,
Nay.
Commissioner Mergen. Excuse me. Aye. Commissioner Lenzmeyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Notch.
Aye.
It passes 4-1.
Thank you. Next up, we have a public hearing, and that is to review the 2023 proposed fee schedule changes. Sarah, I believe, is going to lead that, and
Yeah.
Randy?
So this is the annual setting of the county fees. They'll be effective January 1st. And with me today is Sarah Litch, the County Finance Director. We'll go through that.
Okay, thanks, Randy.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Sarah Litch, Finance Director, and I'm going to walk you through the process a little bit about the fee study that we do annually, and then I will turn it over to Shelley Benson, who has the majority of the fee changes that are being proposed. As a reminder, we do this every year. We select 1/4 of the fees that are charged for various services within the departments of the county, and we do a cost calculation on what it costs to provide those services. I believe in the board packet, you got that, I think it's page 150 or 143, that those start on, where it'll show you the cost calculation on how we figure out the hourly rate, the supplies, and the items that are needed to provide the service. And then as a county, we need to decide how much we charge for those fees, whether there's a commercial factor in that commercial value or whether it's just an individual person benefiting, are some of the things we've historically looked at and talked about. We do also look at other counties and cities around the area that charge the same fees and try to be somewhat comparable to them as well. And we also talk about if that's a mandated service or not that we are required to provide. This notice of the public hearing was put in the Cold Spring Record, and then it also referred people to the county's website where they could see all the changes that were being proposed. And the changes that are being proposed are all to be effective on January 1st, 2023. And so we're requesting a public hearing for that today. And do you want me to go through the results and what our recommendations are now, or do you open the public hearing first?
Whatever you'd like to do, I guess.
I suppose
Do you want me to just go
we
through?
we could do it right now, I guess,
Yeah.
unless you
Okay.
got a computer
I
problem
don't
there.
want to restart this computer. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to go through the results of the 3 departments that requested changes that were outside of the rotational review, because when we do this rotational review, we did just environmental services. We just calculated the cost on the environmental services fees, but we also open it up to all the departments in case there's a change that they would like to recommend, so that we're streamlining it and not coming to the board, more than once a year with fee changes. So with that, the Auditor Treasurer's Office has one ordination fee that they'd like to increase from $10 to $15. There has been a study or reach out to all the departments, all the other counties, And 40 of the counties are charging $20, and there's kind of a variety there in the charges. So we felt we would increase it from $10 to $15. The majority of the counties are between $15 and $20 for that ordination fee. The Recorder's Office charges an ARCA Search e-commerce fee, and they'd like to increase that $5 for the daily, the monthly, and the annual access. So this is just an incremental increase to cover the increased operating costs that go along with providing that service to those that use it. The Sheriff's Office has a couple here. The first one is they would like to provide a discount on the conceal and carry permit and also the renewal for those that are military veterans. The first time permit savings would be $50, so instead of $100, I believe they'd be charged $50. And the renewal is currently at $75, and they would like to give a savings of $25 to those individuals. A note about these conceal and carry permit fees is that they are statutory driven on what they can be spent on. So by providing a discount, you're not, it's not a levy driven program or a levy paid for program. It's a self-sustaining program where the fees that we collect pay for the wages of those that do it and all of the state reporting and software use. So by providing that discount, it is not impacting the levy to others in the county.
So Sarah, then it's $50 to apply and $50 to renew, right? You said it was $100 and $75 normally?
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
And then the last one here we brought before the board a couple years ago. We're looking at increasing the serving of paperwork under the civil process execution filing. There's a handful of them on packet page 153, I think. And basically, because of the cost of fuel and the increase to deputies' wages, that's where we get that increase to go from $60 to $70. The cost to provide those services is between $150 and $200 back when it was calculated in 2020. And so, of course, we've had 2 years worth of wage increases, fuel changes, and that kind of such. And so we would like to increase that from $60 to $70. The rest of the fee changes being proposed are being proposed by Environmental Services. And so I thought I would let Shelley take over and walk through those by division so that we could have a better understanding of those.
Thank you, Sarah. Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. So we have a few fee changes. What we tried to do is make sure we looked at the mission, vision, and values and looked at how do we provide our services as we move forward. So we did take into account any commercial value and then who was the benefiter of that service. So in our food, pools, and lodging area, which is on packet, starts on packet page 144, what we look to do is make an increase into these services based on what we see as a whole. It is not mandated for us to do this service. We are a delegated service. It is something we do so that we have local insight and inspection opportunities, and it is something that the state and the county have a delegated agreement for. So we do all of that inspection. For example, in the city of St. Cloud, they are also a delegated entity, and they do inspections for the city of St. Cloud. So in Stearns County, we do all of the services in the unincorporated area and the municipalities, and those are not done by the state of Minnesota. So the majority of ours in the food, beverage, and lodging are commercial establishments. In some cases, they are nonprofits. So what we looked to do was do a capture rate of about 70% for the average cost of our services when we looked at those establishments, and then looked for a lower capture rate in some of those other areas, like the seasonal food stands. So when you go to the county fair, you go to some of those other events that take place, we're making sure we didn't increase those costs significantly for those vendors. Any questions related to food, pools, and lodging? So you can go ahead.
Shelley, those are annual fees?
Yes, those are annual licenses. Sewage treatment would be the next area that we would take a look at. again, in this particular case, we are mandated to do this service. So we do adopt an ordinance for sewage treatment systems, and we are the health authority across the county. So even in cities, we have the opportunity to provide that service. So this would be for all of our sewage treatment areas. And we try to look at, so what you're seeing here is where are the areas of concern? The type 3 systems take more time to review because it's a change in how they work that system. There's some variation in that type 3 system in comparison to a type 1 and a type 2. So that takes a little more cost, so we want to split that out and add an increased fee for that, slightly increased. And then in-field verification. So in some cases, when we are doing in-field verification, we are doing it, that's that soil sample. Someone goes out, they dig a hole in the ground, we have to take a look at it to verify where that water table is within that soil area. When they're doing an advanced system, we need to make sure that we are having an advanced inspector look at that advanced system. So that's why we are looking to add that cost, because it's more training and more time that we spend on those advanced systems. Now, we don't have a lot of them, but that benefit typically on those types of systems are for that individual. So we are looking to do a slight increase there. And then the obvious one, incomplete designs take more time and money. So we are looking to increase those costs. Shoreline administration, again, this is a splitting of fees in some cases for, in shoreland, we're looking to administer, again, mandated program by the state, been in place since '73. We're looking to add some fees to capture the costs for that shoreland licensure of our contracted workers. And I think those are the main fees that we are looking at this point. Those would typically cover that cost of the shoreland contractors workshop because we license them annually as well. Solid waste, again, a lot of this isn't levy, super heavy on the levy because it's solid waste fees, and we use our environmental service fees for a lot of these things. But we do have some program areas that relate. We do have mandated services by the state of Minnesota to provide household hazardous waste service and waste management. So increasing the fee to more closely align with providing our costs of service. So it's a slight increase in the hauler licensing. Wetland fees, again, this is also an area where we do not even closely come to covering our costs, but we try to take a little bit of that back. So we are looking to add a little bit more back in that service fee area. But there's a lot of time, staff time out in the field. And then when we have banking applications and processing, banking applications take a lot of administrative time. And then zoning and land use, looking to address some of the inadequacies in our fees. We have a lot of value associated in our commercial construction areas, as well as all of our construction permits. And the time to issue these permits has increased because the complexity of the sites have increased, which is why it takes more time. We are out on those sites, especially in shoreland, for significant amounts of time, making sure we look at all of the factors associated. So, go ahead.
Shelley, I know we struggle with that. Is there can we increase the times on, in processing an application like that, or is that driven by state statute?
We have, the state statute says we have 60 days to process an application.
Yeah.
There's no way that our public would be happy or satisfied if we took 60 days to issue a permit. So the only way we can effectively change how the time frame in which we issue the permit is having more staff. Because right now, I don't have the amount of staff to do all of those things, to process, as well as look at all the conditions that get placed, and going back to those conditional use permits, interim use permits, and all the other permits that we've issued, subdivision agreements, and checking on all of those things. So in order for us to try to do a more complete job, it takes the staff time. And that's why the numbers have increased over time.
Yeah. Working outside of that 60 days, though, can that be done with the request of the applicant?
Yes.
So the extension can be made on their end, but not on our end?
Well, we can do one 60-day extension, so we get a total of 120 days. But I'm going to go back to satisfaction of the public. The expectation is when they submit a plan that they get something back in a reasonable amount of time. There's a lot of process that goes on right now. Construction is tight. When people get a contractor, it's not easy. And so for us, we're trying to speed up the process. We have had, and if you look at our performance evaluation, you'll see we are all within the 60 days, or we do an extension request. So it's not a matter of us not meeting the state statute. It's a matter of meeting the public perception and what they need. And so it's really trying for us to help move these permits forward faster, and having an additional staff person, would help us in that process. But the fees really relate to all the amount of work that's being done, especially in those shoreland areas, and then conditional uses, interim uses, anything that adds a layer of complexity takes more time. So we are trying to make sure people are in compliance before we issue a new permit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I'm also sensitive on the construction end as far as their ability to get things accomplished on the site. That's a challenge for them because of contractors and workforce and everything like that as well. But sometimes we run into circumstances, especially environmental with the DNR, perhaps that makes it a challenge. So anyway,
yeah,
we can move on.
So we do recognize that there are significant challenges, not just with us as an entity, but the fact that we do have to check with other entities, whether it's Minnesota Pollution Control, whether it is the DNR, Board of Water and Soil Resources, Soil and Water Conservation District Office, a watershed district. It depends on what the project is and where the project is. So we try to make sure that we're looking at all those levels, because once we issue that permit, we want it to move forward. We don't want it to be delayed, because there's enough pressure on those applicants getting these permits through and trying to make sure they meet all the requirements. So our goal is to try to process them in a timely way so that they're able to move their project forward, and they have an expectation of what that is. So we tell people when they submit their permit, we're in the 3 weeks. It takes us about 3 weeks to issue those permits. Now, sometimes we get lucky and we're a little bit ahead, and sometimes it's a little bit further, but we really do want to shorten those timeframes if at all possible. Again, demand for services, things like solar, as you can see, we are looking to increase that cost to reflect more closely the time that it takes us to issue those permits. So you can see there's a significant change. So if there is a specific fee or concern that you have, I'm here to answer any questions.
Any commissioners? Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
I don't have a question specifically, but to point out this is an argument that'll never go away, is balancing the requirement of a fee versus the public good. How much does the fee benefit the individual applicant versus what amount of the process in terms of the financial costs incurred of the process should the public pick up? And that'll never be settled, but this is another illustration of the big picture on that. So beyond that, getting into the specifics of it, I don't have any enlightenment to offer, but this was discussed 20 years ago. It'll be discussed 20 years hence. It's It's one of those we'll never quite figure out because each individual has their own perception.
I guess one comment I would have too, there's certain areas here where, take for instance, wetland banking applications. Right now it's tough to get these wetland credits for highway and stuff to do road projects. But in the same breath, if you're, so I'm just looking at number 8, wetland banking application, application for deposit. It's a $200 fee. Should that more reflect the actual cost? I mean, some of these, I think, because when you do a wetland banking application, obviously we end up buying these credits, and granted they're expensive enough, but in reality, shouldn't the applicant be covering them more of the fee to request the banking? These are tough. Like Lee mentioned, they're tough, but some of these I think could be closer to the reality of what it costs. I mean, we all see our levies go up, every year. Should some of these costs be more bore by the people using the services? And it's a balancing act, and I don't want to see us stymie any growth and stuff like that either. But some of these I just see as if 75% of the cost should be our goal, especially some of these smaller ones, I mean, we're close. We're like $50, $75 off. Why aren't we just charging what it actually costs? My opinion. And so, otherwise, if we don't have any more, we can open the public hearing, see if anybody is.
Fine, I'll save my question.
Okay. You have anything else, Shelley?
I don't. I appreciate that comment. That's kind of what we've always looked for, is what percentage to capture. And I think it varies depending on kind of the service and that public benefit. And as Lee said, we talked about it 20 years ago, because I remember. I don't know if I'll be here in 20 years from now, but you never know. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. But with that, I would open the public hearing to, if there's anyone here wishing to discuss or comment on the 2023 proposed fee schedule changes. Please come up to the microphone now, state your name and address, and provide your comments. Again, anyone here wishing to speak on the proposed changes? In regards to these fees. These would be strictly on the fee schedule that we're going over.
Mary Kay Hooney, 9850 Jenny Lane. I just want to mention about my thought on the solar panels is, and it's maybe not really reflecting the fees, but I just want to make one comment that I've had many people approach me, family members from out of state, say what an eyesore these solar panels are. And funding them, to me, needs to be reconsidered. I don't think they look good in our environment. They're only going to get worse. Drive around, look around. They're not pretty, and they're taking land. They're taking land. That is what they're about. Okay. They don't really create that much energy. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks. Again, anyone else wishing to speak on the proposed fee changes for 2023? Seeing nobody, I'll close the public hearing. And wishes of the board? We'd be looking for a motion to either accept or deny the proposed fee changes.
Mr. Chair, just a question, any written testimony at all?
None? Okay. Sarah indicates none. Randy indicates none. So.
And this should say effective date of January 1st, 2023.
Oh.
Sorry about that typo.
Okay.
make the motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Clark. Do we have a second? Yes, I'll second it. Commissioner Notch, any further discussion? Commissioner Persky? No? Okay. Nobody has any further discussion?
I can second it.
Oh, I already did. Unless you want to stay here a lot longer, but, so we have a motion and a second to approve the fees as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Our next item is a presentation from the Great River Regional Library. I believe Karen is here this morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see you all. It's good to see a full room, too. Lots of engaged citizens here today. So I'm Karen Punsak. I'm Executive Director for Great River Regional Library, and I think they're pulling up the slides here. Thanks. Magical control room people. That's awesome. So as you know, Great River Regional Library is a 6-county library system. Stearns County is one of our 6 counties and one of the major partners within this joint powers agreement. Here at Great River, we represent 32 libraries in addition to the locker system out in Sartell. There we go. Last year, we updated our strategic plan. Some of the information in the strategic plan remain the same. Our core values are the same. We are committed to exceptional service, forward-thinking, community focus. Our strategic priorities changed slightly. We moved from what was a 6-pronged priority to a 4-pronged priority. Literacy and access remain, operational excellence remain, but library awareness is one that's new, where we heard from our communities and from our library users that they need to know more about what we do and how they can access those services. Our mission and vision remain the same, but our theory of change was added to the plan, where we are here and committed to making sure that people in our communities have the information and resources they need to thrive. And we are hoping to expand a culture of literacy across our counties, expand community engagement and community collaboration in the next 5 years. Stearns County has 1/3 of the libraries in the system, and in addition, Great River Regional Library to go out in the Sartell Community Center, which is primarily funded by Sartell. Of those 10 libraries, 9 received additional open hours at the beginning of this year, thanks in part to our dedicated staff and their ability to flex their schedules and pick up hours. The majority of people working at Great River are part-time, so some of them are working other jobs, they've got kids at home, so the ability to add open hours was a stretch for some of these locations, but we did it, and we're really proud of that. St. Cloud was the only library that did not receive additional open hours, but that library is not only one of the largest in the state, also the one with the most library hours already, so it seemed like we wanted to focus on those smaller communities to make sure access was available for more people. Our formula is set up across the 6 counties, and I'll talk more about that now, but you can see some of the activities that happened in Stearns County over the past year. We hosted a teen focus group over the summer to talk to our teens in particularly the St. Cloud area, so Sauk Rapids, Rice, Sartell schools, and District 742, and those kids gave us some ideas on what we can do to engage teens more in our libraries. One of those ideas is actually taking place right now. There's a teen bookmark challenge that's happening. Kids are being asked to provide some artwork of their own and hopefully get selected to have their bookmark distributed across the region. We're really excited about that project. We have lots of programs that happened. We had over 800 programs across the region available to our kids this summer, primarily through our Legacy Arts and Cultural Heritage funding, which is given to us from the state. In addition, we also partnered with a nonprofit network out of the Twin Cities called Every Meal, in addition to the Yes Network here in St. Cloud. And those 2 partners allowed us to distribute free food at all of our locations and offer free summer meals at the St. Cloud Public Library.
We also expanded our Wi-Fi to Go hotspot project this year. That was primarily through donations and our state regional library telecommunications aid. We now are checking out hotspots at all 32 locations. Some of them are a 1-week checkout, and we just expanded the project, so there are now 3-week checkout hotspots available as well. So the Great River Board is a function of the 6-county structure. We have a joint powers agreement, and in that agreement, it sets up who's on the board. So there are 5 representatives from Stearns County, because Stearns County is the largest budget share. The formula that each county pays is based on the population of the county, the net tax capacity of the county, and the number of borrowers in the county. So even if we have a flat budget, that dollar amount fluctuates from one year to the next. In the coming year, we are looking at a 3% overall increase to our total budget. That is primarily because 70% of our budget is personnel. And so we will be looking at 2 union contracts that are up at the end of the year, and we're anticipating some increases in relation to personnel salaries. But as you can see on this table, Wright and Stearns County are our 2 largest county funders. And over time, the number of borrowers, the dollars in tax capacity, and the population in Wright County has been increasing faster than Stearns County for several years. Right now, Stearns in the 2023 budget will still be ahead of Wright County by about $35,000, but I anticipate at some point the orange line is going to cross over the purple. When that happens, the makeup of the county board will likely change, because that would mean that Wright County has a larger proportion of the budget and then would have more votes on the board. So just know that that's coming. It hasn't quite come yet next year, but last year, Stearns County was the only county that declined in all 3 areas in proportion to everyone else. How much of that is a COVID impact and may change in the next couple of years, particularly around borrower numbers, remains to be seen. St. Cloud is the largest location in the system. It has borrowers from Sherburne, Benton, and Stearns counties. And right now, the borrower numbers in the St. Cloud Library haven't recovered the way some of the other locations have. In particular, in St. Michael, down in southern part of Wright County, I believe Commissioner Hewson said there were over 700 homes built just in the last year. And so St. Michael's usage is just exponential compared with everyone else. They used to be the 5th busiest library in the system, and they're now like the 2nd or 3rd, depending on what metric you're looking at. So this is going to continue to change over the next several years. But as you can see, Stearns County is still the largest funder. Here is the overall sources of revenue for the Great River budget, just to give you a picture of how the counties line up with the other funding sources. The majority of our funding comes from the 6 counties, but our 3rd largest funding source is our state aid, regional library basic system support. We don't actually get that dollar amount until September, so we're kind of guessing on what that number will be. It fluctuates from one year to the next to over $100,000 in some years. So we're guessing that amount will be about the same. Hopefully that's a good guess. In addition, the last several years, we've been directed by our commissioners on the Finance Committee in particular to start spending down some of our reserves. So right now we have about 5% of the budget being held up between a budget surplus from 2021 and cash reserves. We're on a spend down plan for that. And so those dollars, that part of the pie, will continue to shrink over the next several years, and we'll have to figure out how to make up those funds in future budgets. In addition, in 2020, interest rates dropped, and we had over $100,000 coming in a revenue line from interest rates. That's building back up slowly, but right now, the 2023 budget, it's just not where it was back in 2019. So just to give you a picture, overall, the Great River budget is increasing a total of 3%. It'll be just over $10 million. Included in that budget is $230,000 from our reserves, which is part of that spend down plan, and then the surplus carryover that the board allocated rather than putting it in reserves back at the end of last year. So there's about $560,000 in the 2023 budget in reserves. If there is a surplus at the end of this year, that will roll into the 2024 budget. So we'll continue to use that practice, and that's been helping us kind of mitigate those ebbs and flows within a fairly large budget. The overall Stearns County contribution is going up about 4%, and that's because those reserve lines are starting to decrease as part of the overall budget. Dollars per capita is one of the slides that we're very proud of. At the state level, it costs about $40 per capita to run a library. At Great River, we do it for about half the cost, and that's including all funding sources. The dollars per capita by county varies because the formula fluctuates from one year to the next. You can see Stearns County is kind of in the middle of the pack right now, and Wright County is definitely toward the top. So thank you for your support of Great River Regional Library. We come and talk about the library twice a year, once at the beginning of the year just to tell you what we all did and at budget time. So we're here to talk about the budget. If there are other questions you want us to answer, I'd be happy to do that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Any questions for Karen? Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, this is, I appreciate the presentation, and we're talking budget today. The question is about the broadband and Wi-Fi. How many of those hotspots have we increased to?
I want to say it's over 120.
Okay.
The other project I didn't talk about, we did receive ARPA funds, and one of the projects we're looking to use those dollars for is expanding Wi-Fi signals in cities with libraries, with parking lots who want us to. Not everybody wants us to turn the Wi-Fi signal on stronger in their parking lot 24/7, but several of our communities do, and we're in the midst of that project right now.
And you know, I'd be an advocate for that. Along with those lines, as we're struggling to get broadband across the county, how many would you say high school students are perhaps using it because they don't have broadband access perhaps in their area? Is it being used at all by the students?
You know, I can't speak to the number of students, but over the last 2 years, we've actually worked with community partners. In addition to the checkout option, we have the hotspots placed at Promise Neighborhood with United Way, City of Grace, Boys and Girls Club. So in places where kids are going after school or, you know, during the summer who need Wi-Fi access and have it available there too. And those hotspots can run up to a dozen devices depending on what's happening. So we've been working really hard to make sure kids have access where we can.
Commissioner Bergen?
I can try. I think there's probably more there than what was actually spoken, but the two things I heard about was a specific title and then a program that happened at the St. Cloud Public Library. I'll speak first about the program because that's a little more straightforward. The St. Cloud Public Library is an enormous library with lots of study rooms and meeting rooms. The program that was brought up today was actually not a library-sponsored program. That was someone actually using the meeting room and billing it as an event happening at the library. So just be aware that there are a lot of different things happening in those meeting rooms. That's our job, is to provide a space for lots of new ideas, lots of community gatherings, and we work really hard to make sure that those fit within the requirements set up by the St. Cloud Library Board at the St. Cloud Library Building. If people have questions about any of those events, I'm happy to talk about those. Go ahead, Jeff. No, they are completely free. They have to be free by definition. You cannot charge for an event at the library. And I think some of my favorite days at the library are when we get, I don't know, like the Tea Party and the Pride group right next to each other in two different meeting rooms. Like, those are the days that we're actually fully a public library. We are a place where every idea is welcome, and every idea, as long as it fits within our policies, is part of what we offer in terms of civic engagement. In terms of the title, it's perfectly normal. I haven't looked at, I didn't see which images they showed. Walking into this, I had received a question about it from a patron over the weekend as well. There is, just to the east of us at East Central Regional Library, a fairly substantial discussion happening about that particular title. So I want to be careful to honor everybody's opinion, because if you didn't have a strong opinion about what's happening in terms of that title at the library, it means you don't care. And everybody who is raising these questions cares very deeply. They might not all agree, but they care very deeply. And I want to honor that regardless of what the opinion is. But It's Perfectly Normal is a book that's been in our collection since 1994. So it's not a new title. It is currently cataloged in our juvenile nonfiction section under sex education for kids. So, it's been there a long time. I think there's different editions of that book with different illustrations. I haven't looked at them all, so I don't know exactly which book was raised today. That being said, Great River's strong position is our duty is to provide access to ideas. And we're not doing our job if we don't have something on the shelf that you don't agree with. We're just not doing our job. So, the fact that there's somebody who disagrees with this book isn't surprising. Our job is to purchase materials that people have asked us to purchase, and they've also asked us to provide information that helps them make understanding of their world. So whether this gets continued to be discussed at Great River, that'll happen, and management at the board. I trust our staff who have done the selection and the cataloging for this book that this is where it probably belongs. That being said, we are a community library and it's fair to ask those questions. We have a process for that. So if anybody wants to raise an issue, they just need to fill out a request for reconsideration form and we'll work through our process, and that's fully within our policy. So does that help?
And those forms are available at every branch, I would assume.
Yeah, or they can just email me or contact us on the website. We can send it out. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from Karen? Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
I'm the library appointee by this board, and the thing that surprised me over time, I anticipated our growth in providing electronic resources to grow faster than it has. It has grown, but I had anticipated virtually maybe not a complete transfer to that, but a greater transfer. And what I've come, I think, to appreciate is there is some psychological payoff to actually holding a book. Doesn't make any damn sense to me, but apparently that's reality for some folks. So I've been there long enough now to appreciate that's not ever going to go away. And we will continue to move along both venues or both ways of providing resources as time goes on. And in addition, relative to controversy that develops over what resources the library has versus it doesn't have, there will be an element of controversy to that as well, because what one person or group of persons finds to be objectionable is just ducky to another group of folks. So the idea that libraries can be successful in avoiding controversy is pretty optimistic. So stay tuned. The good news is once in a while, folks need to be reminded that we're out there. And if by chance we are carrying something they find objectionable, well, it does expose our resources to more people. So, yeah, I think this is business as usual. We don't, by carrying certain resources, we're not necessarily promoting that individual point of view, but the reality is it needs its own forum as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Karen? All right. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we're scheduled for a break, so we'll take a 5-minute break. I'd like to call the board meeting back to order. Our next item is Auditor Treasurer. Randy?
Thank you. I'm Randy Schreifel, the Stearns County Auditor Treasurer, and with me today is Laura Laudenbach, the Election and Service Center Director, and Roxanne Garrett, the Election Supervisor. So we're going to do some education on the election, on the voter registration and absentee balloting. I'm also going to do a primary recap, and then go over some questions. And plan is to come back to the board a couple more times before the general too. So go ahead. Okay, so the primary, just a quick recap on that. We had many new clerks, head election judges and election judges, and we thoroughly trained those. I think they did a really good job. It certainly was a lot of turnover for this year, so I guess if you see an election judge or a clerk, thank them for their effort, because they are the backbone of this, right? Elections happen locally, so. The new equipment was the Omni ballot, and that went well. It doesn't get a lot of use. That's a federally required assisted voter technology. Election night went very smooth also. The results came in very timely. I think you probably all noticed that. I'll go through the St. Cloud recount in a couple slides here. And one thing that was a little different with this primary is there was a number of school referendums on it, and that's probably certainly helped with the voter turnout. So these are the numbers. And we put 2018 up there because that's the most similar recent election. Let's see, the one number that's a little bit higher for this past one is the absentee and mail balloting. As we know, that's increasing. But other than that, the turnout is pretty similar to the last election. That was similar. So there was a recount in Ward 2, Precinct 2. This was a St. Cloud recount. The three counties all had precincts in this ward. So the recount had two tables that were counting. This is run by the City of St. Cloud. Representatives from both candidates and the City of St. Cloud were all available that did the recount. So how recount works is, the two counties or the two tables are going through ballot by ballot, sorting them. They're being directly observed by the representatives. And just for your information, it's the top two vote getters who move on to the general. And the second and third vote getter, started with a 3-vote difference. So there was a 1-vote change because a voter on one of the ballots originally was going to vote for one of the candidates, crossed it out, and then circled who they wanted to vote for. So the machine reads the oval, so the oval had the crossed out in it, didn't have the oval for the other candidate they intended to vote for. So that's then trying to interpret voter intent. So the table, the judges, they make a declaration of where they think the voter intent was. The two challengers have a chance to challenge that. Nobody challenged any ballots. So this also is, evidence that the machines were perfectly accurate. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. So let's see. So then it ended up with a 4-vote difference. So,
Yeah, Randy, could the voter have asked for a new ballot, and then you said, I have a spoiled ballot, and they could have just...
Yeah, that's a good point. What the voter should have done is, if he mismarked the ballot, go back up to the ballot judge, get a new ballot, we spoil the old ballot, and then they can vote on the current ballot. Yep, thank you for mentioning that. I'm going to turn it over to Laura, and she's going to go through some education.
Randy,
as long as that came up, how does that work then with mail-in ballots?
Well, so this would be the same for a mail-in ballot. So all the ballots are counted together. It doesn't matter if it's mail or not.
Right, but how would they get a new ballot then?
In a mail-in ballot, they would not get a new ballot, right? Well, if we see it, I guess, as we're going through it. Go ahead, Roxanne.
If the voter in a mail ballot precinct or someone who voted absentee, if they made a mistake when they were marking their ballot at their kitchen table or wherever they're doing that, they can contact us and we would send them a replacement ballot and we would spoil the one that they
Would they have to return the one that they?
They would not. We would spoil that in the system before we even send them a replacement ballot. The system doesn't let us issue more than one ballot without spoiling the original ballot.
Go ahead, Laura.
All right. Again, my name is Laura Laudenbach, the Division Director. Thank you for having me, Commissioners. We're going to talk a little bit about who can vote in Minnesota. So when you register to vote and you're voting, you take an oath, and the requirements are that you're 18 years old on Election Day, you're a U.S. citizen, you resided in Minnesota for at least 20 days before the election, you maintain residence at the address given on the registration form, you're not under court order that revokes your right to vote, you haven't been found by a court legally incompetent to vote, you have the right to vote because if you are convicted of a felony, that felony sentence is over. And I believe I missed the guardianship. So if you're not under a court order guardianship, in which that would be where the court order revokes your right to vote. When you're signing off on this oath, you could, if you're falsifying any of these statements, get up to 5 years of imprisonment or a $10,000 fine or both. So that's what you're signing off on. To register to vote, you can actually pre-register before Election Day. That will make sure that your name is on the roster on Election Day. And for the November election, you'd want to do that before October 18th. To do that, you can do that either online through mnvotes.org, where you can either just register online or download the form or contact the county and we'll mail you the application. If you decide to wait till Election Day, you can still register on Election Day. You would need to bring your photo ID with you that has current information. If it's not current, you'll need to bring proof of residence with you, which could be like a bill, a lease agreement, something of that sort. And we had a lot of questions for the primary on where their polling place was, who's on their ballot. All of this information can be found at mnvotes.org. So when you are entered into the state voter registration system, that information is sent to two places, because we require either your driver's license ID number or the last 4 digits of your social security number as your identifying unique number. Overnight, that information will get sent from our system to DVS, Department of Vehicle Services, or to Social Security Administration, where that information is verified. A lot of people had questions on the difference between absentee ballots and mail ballot precincts. So first of all, for early voting, which is absentee voting, you can do that 46 days before an election. We're going to be starting that process again at the Service Center in City Hall on September 23rd for the November election. And then some precincts are chosen to be direct voting sites, which means that 7 days before the election, they would come in and put their ballot directly into the DS200. If you're a mail ballot precinct, there's some criteria that needs to be met. So first of all, you have to have fewer than 400 voters by June 1st. And that township or city can choose to hold mail ballot elections, but they have to be approved by the county auditor, Randy, before that process happens. All registered voters in those precincts are notified, first of all, by a postcard that they are a mail ballot precinct. And then they will be sent, if they're registered, they'll be sent a mail ballot automatically. They can either mail that back to us, they can bring it in person, they can use our Dropbox for that, however they wish to get that ballot back to us. For state and federal elections, if they choose to vote on election day, so this year, if they wanted a mail ballot precinct, wanted to vote in person, they would have to come to the service center on election day. They don't have a designated polling place for state and federal elections other than the service center.
So Laura, if they do that, are they given a ballot for what their precinct, so if they're in the Albany School District,
Yeah,
they get the right? Okay.
exactly. So Stearns County has currently 23 mail ballot precincts, and we would pull that ballot for them to have that, would be the one that they would vote with, so.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mergen?
Yep, Laura, I have a question. Okay, on same-day registration.
Yep.
What if later on this person has somehow found that that ballot they were not a legal voter, felony, whatever it may be? How is that retracted then from the system?
So if somebody chooses to vote and they registered that day, and then they sign the oath that they are meeting the standards. So anything that is questioned or challenged is sent up to our attorney's office.
Okay, but how is that vote retracted out of the system then?
Yeah, at that point, it would not be retracted.
Good morning, I'm Roxanne Garrett's the election supervisor. I'm going to talk a little bit about the absentee ballot process. So when a resident decides they want to absentee vote, they can request it either online at minvotes.org, or they can contact our office and we can send them a paper application. When they fill out the application, so for example, for the primary, if they wanted to vote absentee for the primary and the general, there is an opportunity at that time to request it for both elections. If they just want to do it for the primary, they certainly can just do it for the primary. But that is one of the first questions on the application is, do you want it just for the primary, or do you want it for the primary and the general? On the application, they do need to complete all their information as far as their last name, their first name, date of birth, their address, and then they also need to put down whether they have a Minnesota driver's license or the last four numbers of the Social Security. And the reason we ask for that is because once it gets to the ballot board, that is what we look at as their ID to make sure that it is their ballot that is coming back. Once on the paper application, they would go ahead and sign that. If they request an application online, there is not a signature online that we would compare it to. But if it does get to the point where we need to compare the application signature, we would only be able to do it if they did it by a paper application. Once they've completed the applications, those are forwarded to our office, whether it's online or in paper and through the mail. Once we receive it, we go ahead and process it in the state voter registration system. We create what they call a absentee ballot record. So when we get those, we go ahead and create that record and send them out a ballot for whichever precinct they live in. If they do make a mistake on there, we've gotten in, especially for the primary, there was a lot of spoiled ballots for the primary because most people don't. We send out instructions with the absentee ballot packets, and the primary, on the front side of the ballot, you need to vote by party. And for the primary, we noticed that a lot of people had called and said, you know what, I accidentally voted in both parties. Can you send us a replacement? So before we can even send a replacement, like I mentioned earlier, we need to go into the system and cancel the current ballot in there, and then we can send them a replacement. So the system doesn't let us send out more than one ballot unless the original one is spoiled. Once an absentee is returned, it is accepted or rejected by the absentee ballot board. The absentee ballot applications may come from multiple sources, and a voter can complete and submit more than one application, but they will only receive one ballot. There are multiple organizations that will send out applications, so it's very common for a voter or a citizen to receive multiple applications. And I think in the past it was confused that some citizens thought it was actually they receiving more than one ballot, and that's not the case. The system does not let us issue more than one ballot.
Roxanne, can I ask, what's the makeup of like the ballot board?
So the makeup of the ballot board is 2 judges from different political parties. In addition to that, we can also have deputy auditors as part of the ballot board.
Thank you.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
You might be getting to it, so I apologize. I just didn't see it. Before somebody sends it back in, it has to be witnessed.
Yes, and I will go through an example of the envelopes and such, yes. So once we do get it back, the ballot board, we ensure that it is either registered or they have completed a voter registration application. So if a citizen is not registered, they will receive a different packet than a person who is non-registered. So for example, we've got a registered envelope, their signature envelope, and on the top they would have their label with their name and address. It has a scan bar on there, and that's how we, when we receive them back, we scan the barcode, and the system will tell us if the envelope they sent back was already spoiled in the system. It doesn't let us go any further until we do some further checking into that signature envelope. They also request that they're required to put their ID number on there. That is what we use to compare to the application that they submitted or their online application. The voter is also required to sign that. And then on the bottom part of the envelope is where the witness would sign. They would put their name, their Minnesota street address, and then they would sign that. For a citizen that is non-registered, they receive a little bit different envelope, and their witness, it's the same information on top. They need to provide, the witness needs to provide their name, their street address, sign it. In addition to that, they need to check on here what the voter showed them indicating the proof of residence. So, for example, some of the options here would be the Minnesota driver's license, ID, permit, or receipt, a bill, whether it is a cable bill, electric bill, notice of late registrations. These are all documents that a voter can use to prove their residence. In addition to the packet, each voter is given instructions on how to vote the ballot. Tells them exactly what they need to do, where to place their ballot into the secrecy envelope, and then the secrecy envelope is inserted into their the signature envelope. So this packet is sent to each citizen that requests an absentee ballot. I think I accidentally hit that. Go back. Backspace, yeah. There we go. I accidentally hit that. So when the ballot board gets that, they do match the information from the application to the signature envelope. Like I said, they go through the ID number, make sure that the voter signed it, the witness signed it, all the information is complete each verifies the voter and the witness signature. Everything is complete for both sections. Once that is all verified, the ballot board would either accept it or reject it. In the event a ballot is rejected, we go into the system, reject that ballot, and then we would send a replacement to the voter with an explanation why it was rejected. Once they are accepted, we go ahead and put those in, we accept them into the system, put them in a secure place, and then 7 days before the election, we can start processing those. I kind of went through a little bit of what the absentee process is by showing you the different envelopes, but again, just for a recap, each voter must complete an absentee voting application, and we have the paper documents, or they can do it online at minvotes.org. When they vote by absentee, they'll receive the ballot, the secrecy ballot, the envelope, and a signature envelope. So in each packet, they'll get their signature envelope, they'll get the instructions on how to vote the ballot and how to return it, and then they'll get their ballot envelope and the ballot, and this is the envelope that they would insert their ballot into, and then put it into the signature envelope, and then mail it back to our office. There are 3 different types of signature envelopes. I have 2 of them here with me today. One is if you are registered. The other is if you are non-registered. And then there is also the envelope if you are in a mail ballot precinct. This is an example of the registered voter signature envelope that I have here with me. As you can see on the top there is a label that we get from the voter registration system, has a barcode on there. That is what we scan once they're either accepted or rejected. Like I had mentioned earlier, if we receive one back that we scan, the system will tell us that there is an error with that one, and then at that point we would go in and check to see what the error was with that, whether it was something that was spoiled in the system already. If that's the case, we would reject that and then contact the voter. And then again, on the bottom part of the envelope, it has the witness portion, and all those fields need to be completed by the witness. Any questions before Laura takes over?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Persky.
So then those townships that are voting strictly absentee ballots, are those automatically sent out to all registered voters?
Those are mail-in ballots.
Right, mail-in ballots.
Correct.
Okay. And if they're not on that, then they go ahead and they request them, and do they have the option of voting here, doing early voting?
Correct. So if they live in a mail ballot precinct, every registered voter will receive a ballot. If they choose not to vote their mail ballot, they certainly can come in and absentee vote, or they can come into our office on election day. But before we can issue them another ballot, that mail ballot that they receive, we have to spoil that in the system before we can even issue a new ballot for that voter. If they are non-registered, they would be able to vote by absentee, or they could, in the absentee voting period, or they can come in to our office on election day.
Commissioner Mergen.
What about this situation? Mail-in ballots, they can be sent in quite early. I happen to be in a mail-in precinct. And so what if the person that mailed that in passes away before the actual election day? How is that occurring?
Right. So, and we have had that happen. I think in 2020, there was a handful that we had to pull. So, for example, if someone, whether it's a mail ballot precinct or someone who votes absentee, on a weekly basis, we are sent a report from the state of any deceased voters in our county. When we enter that into the state voter registration system, we will get a message that there is an accepted ballot in our office. At that point, we would go, if it's the 7 days before, because on the 7th day, we can start processing those. If we have not started processing those, we go and pull that ballot, that signature envelope with the ballot in there, and that would not be processed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
All right, so there's been quite a few election questions that have come up, and we're just going to address a few of them today. First of all, we talked a little bit about this, but citizens will only receive one ballot. There are many political organizations that will send out things that may look like ballots or applications for ballots, but they are not ballots, and they are the ballot that you will receive from Stearns County is sent in registered election mail. It usually has that election mail logo on the envelope there. So votes can't be cast by deceased people. So Minnesota Department of Health does supply us with a list of people that have passed away. And like Roxanne, I think just kind of covered this, but we will get a notification in our system if that person has voted already, and we have to pull that ballot up until the point where the Minnesota state statute lets us open the absentee ballot envelopes to separate them from the secrecy envelope 7 days before an election. Once those are opened, we would have no idea which ballot that is, so we can pull them up to 7 days before. And then Randy, someone more. Citizens can only vote once during an election. Again, your vote is logged by your unique ID. So that could be your driver's license number or ID number, or the last 4 of your social security number. And then once a ballot is accepted, it's indicated on the voter register system, and you will not be allowed another ballot.
Okay, just wrapping up. Election equipment have better accuracy, are cost-effective, produce timely results. So Hyan County does bring in some human error, especially if you're doing it for 8 hours and days on days. Machines are proven to be extremely accurate, with numerous tests, including public accuracy tests, available for viewing by citizens. Hyan County would take weeks to get results. They would need to be done for each race and each ballot style. Machines will identify voter errors and give the voter an opportunity to correct the error. So in the primary, that's a pretty significant issue. So people can only vote for one party in the primary, and often people will like different candidates, so they'll cross over, and the machine will catch that, give the voter an opportunity to correct the ballot and vote again. So, and also, you know, there's also times where a voter will vote for 3 when they're only supposed to vote for 2, for instance, in a school district election. So machine will catch all that, give the opportunity for the voter to correct their problem. So we have over 150 ballot styles and over 40 races on some ballots. Multiple certifications are done on all the election equipments. The post-election review and recounts also demonstrate the accuracy of the equipment. So for instance, the recent recount, the machines were 100% accurate. So next slide. So we're going to continue to do some education on this. Secretary of State's website has a lot of information and frequently asked questions. At one point, we were thinking of doing more on our website, but they already have it all, so we refer to their website. We're going to do future board meetings with more information, as you can see there. We are signed up to do some radio shows, of course, do press releases, keep the website updated, and do social media. We did have the St. Cloud Times walk through our process also recently, so we'll continue to do that. So if there's any more questions.
Hey, Randy, this cast voting thing that people talk about, is that used by anybody in like the state?
Currently nobody does that. We can address that issue in a future one.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. And I just want to bring up one more thing. You know, I had seen the city of Albany had sent a letter or an email that basically, you know, personally thanked, you know, the county for or your staff for the, you know, great election. This would be the city administrator said that we are going above and beyond to help him and his election judges to have a smooth election day. He noted that our directions, training, and support are out of the park and wanted to personally thank Roxanne for running out on election day for the poll pad. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think precincts really appreciate probably the effort you guys put in to make this.
Yeah, and I failed to thank the staff earlier, but yeah, they put in a lot of time and effort and do a great job. And we have a lot of temps, and the temps are generally picked from the party list, and they also have done just a great job. So, yes.
All right. Any other questions, Commissioner Morgan?
This is just a personal opinion, and I had talked to Randy beforehand about it. But in my opinion, when we get an invitation to attend, like the presentation by Eric Van Mechelen in St. Joe, that administration should make an effort to have a representative there, because to just ignore it helps perpetuate any issues that there are, and then some issues, you know, where you think they're not accurate or whatever could be addressed at that point, because they usually have a question and answer period.
Yeah. We'll keep that in mind going forward. I was out of town that evening, so I wasn't able to attend. So,
thank you,
Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
I attended the meeting last Thursday. in St. Joe for two reasons. Number one, it was raining, so my first option was to attend a concert by the St. Cloud Municipal Band at the outdoor venue in Barden Park, but I got rained out. So I knew this was going on in St. Joe, so I decided to take it in. It wasn't driven by any curiosity about the process, because I thought I knew everything. Found out I didn't. I attended the session out at St. Joe, and while it isn't an issue about whether you agree or disagree, it's about learning all we can about the process and the real or perceived shortcomings of what has come about. In our efforts to make the voting process more accessible to people, expanding the pre-voting period for both the primary and the general to 42 days prior to Election Day, and making all of these avenues available for voting. We have also, we're not going to think of every way the process could be potentially compromised. Just like in banking, there have been incidents of fraud for over a century. There are still ways for fraudsters to abscond with funds in situations where they happen to be. That's really reality of the situation. The good news is, if there is such a thing, is that there has been developed so far some excellent examples and information of the ways that the process has been compromised. And the best we can do is make ourselves aware to the extent possible of all of those ways. One of the handouts from last Thursday's gathering in St. Joe is a bibliography of 12 articles that were in various public medias on the issue. I've got about 8 or 9 extra copies of that bibliography, and I suppose if the board deems it has merit, maybe we can put this on the Stearns County website. In addition, a fellow named Eric von Mechelin has written a book that so far is been the best research so far about the issues involving election issues and compromises as it exists. So the good news for us is we are not in the same position of, say, St. John the Baptist, the voice crying in the wilderness. We have some resources out there that we can point to. But if I had to summarize this in a nutshell, I would say in our efforts to make the voting, to open up the voting process to every extent possible, including the 42-day window for pre-voting in all the ways that have been discussed here today, we have created the opportunity for folks to compromise the system. And banking went through this, just about every form of financial practice has had to live with this. This is, as long as there are gains to be gotten from compromising any process, people will do it. So it isn't, in my mind, and really don't care if you disagree with me, but in my mind, if as long as there are opportunities to compromise any system to the advantage of any single group, of any single individual or group, it's going to be taken advantage of. What you just heard is on a local level, significant effort to fix the system to the extent possible as far as our reach can go. I am not willing, and as long as I warm this seat, to look at Randy and his people and say, well, it's up to you, make sense of this. This is, to the extent possible, he and his folks have done a fairly reasonable job of exploring this so far. And the voting process is pretty damn important, so it has merit to check it out. While there's nothing funny about this, I am mildly amused at the folks that come before us and complain about the voting process. And oh, by the way, they come up with a summary of 2 or 3 other things that bug them. So it has taken on an element of a group therapy session, but hey, it needs to be done. So we're doing it. It's not perfect. We don't have a hell of a lot of time to work on this. The folks like Eric have been working on this for about 2 years. So to rectify the situation, it's not unrealistic to expect a similar time frame to fix it to the extent possible. Yeah, it'd be great to have us all figured out by election day, but that's optimistic. I'm glad. I guess I'm grateful that it rained last Thursday. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken this session in. I'm not done reading Eric's book, but I have copies of the 12 the 12 articles cited in various publications and newspapers. I only have about 10 of them here, but certainly we can make copies. And if you want them, I got them, and they merit consideration. I've had enough.
Whew, thank you for that, Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Well, it's not going to go away.
Yeah, it won't go away.
There are parts of this where clearly people don't know what they're talking about, but there are parts of this where they do. And for us to dismiss it just because we're doing the best damn job we can, that's not enough. So let's stay with it, fix it to the extent we can. And then I look down the line. I think there maybe be 3 stages of this, what we can do immediately, what we can do in the midterm, however you decide that is, and then the longer term. And since the efforts to explore this have taken, in detail, have taken 2 years, I think 2 years would be the definition of long term. But to the extent possible, what can we do now? What can we do a little later? And what can we do in 2 years? But no, this isn't fun. But as long as people have something to game by gaming any system, whether it's financial, whether it's personal, people will do it. So we do the best we can to do what we can. Sorry to take so long, but been hell of an education since last Thursday.
Okay, next, Commissioner Persky.
Yeah, I
did you
just
have
had a
comment?
couple of questions, comments. Thank you, Lee, for that observation. I think we all share in the importance of what we're doing here, and also in the protection of our democracy, and making sure that those people that have the right to vote have that opportunity as best they can, because allowing them to participate can only strengthen that democracy. I got a couple questions. First of all, if you recall, we had the legislators in at the beginning of the year, and I think we asked specifically, or I know I did specifically, if any of those legislators had questions or comments about our process, and none of them expressed any interest in making comments or expressing any changes that needed to be done or the process to it. And I don't know if they mentioned it to you, Randy, at all or not. But they were here at the beginning of the year, and I brought that up specifically because I know
in
this.
2000, a number of them, we did do a tour and they observed the absentee ballot process. So they've been, behind the doors, I guess. In the legislative session, there's always election legislation. So, Representative O'Driscoll, for instance, from Sartell is on the election committee, and so he's very knowledgeable election process. So, yeah, and I'm talking to him throughout the legislative session on the various things that are being proposed. So they're engaged.
Right, they're engaged, and they're looking at the process, but they have not questioned about the standards or function of Stearns County, have they?
I have not.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, have we had any complaints at all from any of the candidates as far as the legitimacy of the voting? No. We have not?
No, concerns, no.
All right, thank you.
I mean, I'm not, this is all new information to me in the very recent past. So I think the expectation that anyone else would be aware of this to any great extent is optimistic. But as we learn more about it, we'll be, to the extent, at least at our level, we'll be expected to do what we can to rectify the situation. We at the county level can maybe deal with a lot of this, but yeah, at some point, Joe makes a good point. It'll take action at another level or two to get ultimately fixed. But they need to know, because just like we're learning, what those actions would be. So expecting them at this point to have all the answers, it's like expecting us at this point to have all the answers. So we're doing what we can, when we can, and that's all we can do.
Did you have some, Commissioner Clark?
Thanks. Just really quickly, I mean, I think, voting is clearly just the bedrock of our country. I mean, and I think we all take our own responsibilities very seriously, and then together we do. And I have to admit, it's something that in my family, my grandmother brought up all the time. She was a deputy registrar in a state that used that process. She was an election judge. She did lots of things. And I think one of the things that might be helpful in one of your next presentations is to also just help us, maybe it's reiterating how many different citizens it takes for each of those precincts and what gets looked at, because the accuracy of the machines is very high, and yet we know there are some ballots where it isn't, and that's when we know how long it takes to do a statewide recount. We know how many people it takes to do that. I think helping people understand that the political parties are engaged, that we have many citizens that are engaged, and then perhaps helping us better understand that, as we're keeping all these documents, which they do get kept for quite a while, is that it's us together, not individually, that they belong to. It's kind of like us individually don't have anything to say about our county, it's only us together when we vote as board members. So helping and reinforcing the many positive ways as we continue to strive to continue to do better and make sure that people both have an opportunity to vote the way they'd like to vote, and that we really do have those protections in there to make sure they're counted. So I really appreciate the passion from many people, and I hear about it from many people worrying about many things. We need to help people see and understand why they have confidence, and then what we're doing to keep making things better. But I think it's partially about all those different people who are engaged that really strengthen our democracy. So thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hammes pretty quickly here, but as we've done in the last few years, we want to precede the deep discussion about the budget with our performance measures, because I think that creates a good discussion about really what it is we're doing with those millions of dollars that we spend every year. In addition to that, a lot of what we do, as you all know, are mandates, and so we want to make sure that we're meeting those mandates. Those things that aren't mandates, you, of course, as the governing body and the monitoring body, want to know that we're performing and meeting our goals. And so that's really the reason that we have this discussion here, or this presentation and discussion here, is to show you at least maybe half of the performance measures that we track during the year and from year to year, so we can see how we're doing. In addition to that, just give you a glimpse of where we are with the budget today. And as you saw in the cover sheet for this agenda item, we're at an increase in the tax levy of 4.3%, attributed mostly to our employee costs. I would also say that the tax bill that was in the legislature, that at least at the time that it was being proposed, seemed to be supported by all three parties that need to approve that, but in the end it didn't. But it would have made this 4.3 more like 3.3, because our CPA was going to go up by roughly $800,000, or maybe it was even $1 million. So I don't think there's going to be a special session and adopt that. So I'm afraid that we will be without those dollars. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Steve and let him present our performance measures to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Steve Hammes. I'm the Assistant Administrator for the county, and as Mike said, I'm going to be going through a selection of our performance measures today. Back in 2017, the county signed on to be part of the state's performance measurement system. If you remember, back in June, you had approved and adopted those measures that are part of the state's program, and we sent those down as part of the state program, and we do get a little bit of money from the state for participating in that program. The state encourages that. Again, they have about 25 different measures that they use for cities and counties across the state to try to track performance measurements across jurisdictions. So there's some kind of comparable between jurisdictions on different things that the state has said are standard across the county for different types of government. But we've also tried every year to improve the performance measurements that we use internally as well. And so our departments, as Mike said, do a good job of coming up with measures. Some of those are really measures that focus on the activities of one unit, and it's really useful for the day-to-day operations of that unit or the department. And then there's others that are more larger picture for whole departments or ones that have full county impact. And so again, we don't have all the measures here today. We will have more of them on the website as we go through and put the budget website together. But didn't want to take up too much of your time, since we're a little bit behind schedule already, to go through all of them. So I do have about 20 or so measures in your pack today that I'll be walking through. As I said, we use performance measures to help track departments and have conversations when it comes to budget time about what they're doing, what activities we're doing. It's one thing to have a budget to say how much money we're spending, but what activities are part of that budget? What is the money going for, and what are departments doing to actually account for those dollars? So again, having measures that are quantifiable, that relate to the activities and the real work of those departments, and then what are the results that are being achieved are the goals that we have departments look for as they're coming up with measures. And again, this is a process that's never going to end. Again, I see performance measures as something that we're always going to refine, improve on, and tweak as we hone in on what are the most critical measures that we're going to be looking for each department and the business lines that we have. So when we work with departments on what performance measures to choose and how to improve those, I try to use a couple of different definitions, and I've got those up here on the screen for you now. And I can't memorize all this, so I'm going to have to actually use my notes. So first one is it has to be relevant. It has to be something that is distinctly tied to the core missions of the department, something that is relevant in terms of being able to tell a story about what the department does that also blends into being understandable. It has to be something that is relatable to the public, something that we can tell the story and have the public understand what this measure is for, why we're doing it, and because if it's not, then it's not really useful in the conversation. It has to be something that's timely. It has to be something that, again, is something that's updatable. If it's something that's a measure that's only done once every 10 years, then it's not really something that's conducive to being able to be tracked, to see differences over time or across jurisdictions, and therefore isn't a reliable measure. Again, comparable is always a good key. Again, so far we've been comparing across time with departments. Again, one of our goals is to be able to branch out and compare across with jurisdictions, either inside Minnesota or across the country if we can. It has to be reliable. Again, throughout your meeting today, you've talked about the reliability of data. Data is what data is, but it's important that the numbers stand on their own and that there's no bias, or there's no inherent desire to make them say one thing. The measure has to be something that can stand on its own without needing to be overly explained or needing other supports. It has to be something everyone can agree is something that's a reliable measure. And cost effective. And this has two fronts. One, you don't want to have a measure that costs so much to actually get the measurement that it's more than the cost of doing the service directly itself. That's a fool's errand. And the other side is that you want to make sure that the measures are talking about the cost relative of the product or service that's being delivered, that it's cost effective on its own. So again, those are all things that we talk about with departments as we go through these, and we do, again, work every year to try to improve these measures as we go forward. So with that, jumping in, the first screen is just some general measures for the administration. The first measure looks at the general fund personnel and operation expenditures. You can see there's a spike in 2020 that's related to COVID spending through the CARES Act. Otherwise, we're back down to the low mid $60 million mark for general fund operations. As a reminder for the public, again, Stearns County is one of the largest counties in the state. We're 1,300 square miles. Our population, as you can see on here, this 2019 and 2021 numbers are from the State Demographer's Office. They had us at 161,000 in 2019, but the census numbers for the official census brought that number down to 158,000, and the demographer's new estimate for 2021 just went up a couple hundred from that. Again, the State Demographer's numbers are always about a year behind, so their 2022 numbers should be coming out shortly. The next line is just the juvenile population, and again, you can see that the juvenile population in Stearns County, it represents about a quarter of the population. That number has been fairly steady over time, not just 3 years I have on display. And the same is true with the population that has at least a bachelor's degree. Stearns County, with our universities in town, have a pretty healthy size of the population that has at least a bachelor's degree of over a quarter of the population. The next one I think is pretty interesting. It's the median household income. The 2019 number is from Minnesota Deed, which shows that the median or the 50th percentile in the county for household income is $62,000. So half the population had less than $62,000 for their household income, and half the population had more than $62,000. When the census data was done in 2020, that number went up to $65,000. So again, there was an increase in overall income in the county in the last couple of years. I want to skip down to the poverty level, and you can see that poverty level has been fairly consistent. We were at 11% according to the state in 2019. When the census data was done in 2020, again during COVID, it had just started, but during COVID that number had gone up to 12.1%. And now in 2021, again, the economy we see is again very strong, unemployment is low, and again, median household income is going up. That number has dropped down to 10.6%. And that is reflective then in the unemployment rate. As you can see, pre-COVID unemployment numbers in the county, again, this is from the Federal Reserve. Yes, Commissioner Merkin.
Yeah, I'd like to see the labor force participation rate on here. That's a much more valid statistic than unemployment rates.
That's about 74% when I looked at it the other day, which is higher than most parts of the country.
But I'd like to see that on this.
Okay.
That's a much, much more valid statistics. I'd like to see the comparison of years ago with that versus this unemployment rate, which is, in my mind, not a very valid statistic, as people drop out of the labor force and stuff.
For sure, very true.
And perhaps consider putting both in, since people hear unemployment rate all the time. I like that measure too, Commissioner Merkin. And a challenge is what it was in 2021 has nothing to do with what it is right this moment either.
Right. If you look at the Federal Reserve right now, we're at 2.2%.
Right. So, I mean, it would be interesting to the extent you're able when we talk about this to have the most current information. Thank you.
Okay, noted. And then on the last line, you can see vacant housing rates, which again goes to some of the discussions that when the HRA is in here looking at the issues of affordability of housing, we were at 8% vacant in 2019, and with the census, we're at 8.5% of the housing stock being vacant in the county. Moving on to the county attorney's office. Again, for those of you who were at CJCC this morning, you heard some of this data in detail related to the criminal justice system and the changes in crime rates and the court system. And you can see that overall, the number of criminal cases that have been referred to the county attorney's office have been increasing slowly over the last several years. There was a dip, as you can see, in the numbers in 2019 and 2020, where the numbers fell to just over 2,000 and 2,200. But in 2021, they were at 2,500 different cases, and we're on track to be a little bit lower, but still over 2,000 cases submitted to the court system on the criminal side. On the juvenile side, again, this is looking at issues with child protection and termination of parental rights. You can see the top line, the blue one is on our child protection cases. Those numbers had a spike in 2016 and 2019, if I'm reading the chart well across the room, and then those numbers went down. There was a spike again in 2021. The pace is looking to level off so far this year in 2022. The red line, the one in the middle, is a termination of parental rights. And you can again see a spike in 2016 and 2019 with over 100 cases of termination of parental rights. And the number went down again in COVID and seems relatively steady for 22. And the bottom line are truancy lines, because the county, again, most people may not remember this, but the county is responsible for truants, and that's housed in the county attorney's office. And again, there was a spike in 2016 through 18, and then it's fluctuated, and the numbers are relatively leveled off to where they were before 2016 for 20 and 21. Now it's the auditor's office, and since we have Randy in the room, I'll let him do his own.
So the first one is the bond rating. It's gone up 3 times over the last 20 years, I guess. So the next level would be AAA, which is pretty difficult to get to. I think the county's finances are as good as they can be. What they look at to get to the AAA rating is what's called overlapping debt. So all the debt your cities and school districts have, and also what the economic diversity is and all that. They're evaluating risk, so we're at AA plus. Difficult to get to the next level, I would say. So, this is debt service per capita. We continue to go down. Obviously, what we do with the law enforcement center will affect this. We are amongst the lowest in the state on this area. So. Drive-through. So as you remember, the drive-through was a very popular thing during the pandemic. Before that, we were one of the only counties in the state that had a drive-through, and now we have 2 drive-through lanes, which I believe that's the only county in the state that has that. So obviously that really helps our citizens. It's very popular, something that people like, especially for a family. They come in, they can get their work done going through the drive-through. They don't have to unload the kids and all that. So it's a very popular service. We had people during the pandemic come from miles away and would sit in line, as you remember, for hours, which was pretty incredible. So very popular. The virtual license center, we updated that just recently. again, that gave people the opportunity to do their license centers transactions online. We have the most robust virtual license center in the state. I mean, Hennepin County is looking at what we're doing, for instance. So we are the leader in the state in this area.
Okay. All right, now moving back to other departments. So the next one is for environmental services. And so this one is looking at the number of inspections for food and beverage. And so you can see that, again, there were 400 establishments that were being inspected in 2020. The number of facilities went down in 2021 due to a number of restaurants that closed during COVID. So there was only 374 facilities as opposed to 413. The number of inspections that were conducted was held consistent based on the market. The next one is looking at a state requirement. Again, some of these are state mandates, so we're required to process permits within 60 days in environmental services. And so you can see the history over the last 5 years that in 19 and 20, we were just a tiny bit short of 100% compliance. The number had increased. The number of permits or activities has increased over the last 5 years, where we were at 1,200 in 2017. We're at close to 1,600 in 2021. Again, 100% in compliance in 2021, and only 0.1% off in 2020. The next one is diversion for landfills, and this is looking at, again, being able to separate the waste stream and get garbage kept out of the landfill through other means, through the incinerator plans that we have and other examples. And so we've been consistent to be able to keep between 75,000 tons and 85,000 tons out of the waste stream each year. And in terms of the percentage of waste diverted, there was a dip in 2019, but otherwise we've been over 70% being able to be diverted. Going on to highway. No? Okay. All right. In highway, we have two measures. The first one is our pavement ratings. So the state, MnDOT, comes out and does an analysis of all of our pavements every 2 years. So they should be doing it this year. And so we don't have the 2022 numbers, but we do have the 2020 numbers here. Again, the goal for the state and the county is to have less than 5% of our lane miles to be in poor condition and to have 75% or more of our road miles in good or excellent. And so you can see again in the results from MnDOT in 2020 that 82% of our road miles were considered good or excellent, and only 2.7% were considered poor. And I think that does, serves credit to both Jody and her department, as well as to the board, for enacting the sales tax to, again, accelerate the repairs and construction on our roads. The next measure related to, again, how well our condition is how well we maintain them, not just do construction projects. And so this chart shows the cost per mile that we invest into roads. And so you can see, again, the county has about 966 miles of lane miles of roads across the county, which is a significant amount, again, being that we are one of the largest counties in the state for land area, and that the cost of maintaining those roads year over year has gone up. So in 2014, it cost just over $8,000 per mile to maintain those roads, and now the cost is $9,500 in 2021. And I would imagine with inflation costs for 2022, those numbers will keep increasing as well. The next department is human resources. Again, the measures we have here relate to the county's values of inclusion and diversity. And so this slide looks at the diversity of the applicants who apply for county employment. On the right side, you see disabled applicants, because we track those as well. And on the left side, it's persons of color. So you can see that the applicant pool is about 14 to almost 18% members of persons of color over the last 3 years. And for disabled applicants, it's between 7.5% and 8% per year. The next slide looks at the diversity of our employee population base. And so again, we were at 4.2% people of color in 2020, and we're at 4.9% at the beginning of 2022. And this is juxtaposed to the column on the right is, again, the census data that Stearns County is 12.5% listed as people of color. And so, again, we are continuing to work on making sure that we reflect the community we live in as part of the county's values. And, again, the mission of the goal, which says, again, to provide exceptional customer public services for a safe, healthy, vibrant county for all. This last slide for HR is looking at employee turnover, as we talked earlier about unemployment, and as we look at other issues of turnover in the county. Since COVID, we've had a lot of turnover here, not just as our employer, but across the county and across the nation as people keep changing jobs or chose this as a time to leave the workforce or retire early or whatever their individual case may be. A normal or healthy turnover rate is something that's roughly below 8% per year is what you hope to have for an organization. In 2020, our turnover rate for employees was 6.9%. Which was a little high, a little aggressive, but it was within what is normally considered adequate. In 2021, that jumped up almost doubled to 11.8% turnover. And as I talked to the board as we were preparing for labor talks, indicated that again, the way the job market is right now, it's an employee market in many cases, and so again, being able to recruit and retain employees is not as easy as it once was, and having a turnover rate of over 11% kind of shows that. And again, I don't know that the marketplace is going to change anytime in the next year or so, but hopefully those numbers go down. At this point, the county's had over 75 openings for most of the year. As fast as we can fill them, people are choosing to have other jobs or choosing to retire. And now we have Human Services, and I brought in an expert. Because she's much better talking about hers than me. But
before you leave, Steve, I have some questions. Of this 4.33% tax levy proposal, how much of that is from new construction, new revenue?
I would have to defer to Randy on that one.
Yeah, we'll have a slide on that in the next meeting, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head. The numbers are similar to last year, so I think you're around 2%, 2.5%.
Approximately 2. Okay.
I would guess about 2.2, but I'll let you know that.
Okay. And just another comment, that something I've been saying for years, the word that I see missing all of the time in there is still transparency in all of the goals of the county. And you talked about the biggest percent increase here is from salaries, and I've been asking for salaries to be on the Stearns County website. I know they'd be a year behind. Been asking for that for years too, and that's never out there. That's part of transparency in my mind. That should be there. Then I have another question. In view of the library, they're asking for a $93,000, almost $94,000 increase. What is the minimum amount that we're required by the state to contribute to the library concerning the situations going on there?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I know that we received it, but there's the number that the state requires us to pay, but we are a member of a joint power board that we are required to pay whatever their board sets. We don't have an option to change that.
And Lee, you're part of that. Lee's part of that joint powers board on that board?
Don't remember.
I don't have the, Commissioner Moran, I don't have the number in front of me, but it's considerably less.
And
what the state requires than our joint powers agreement requires.
Okay. So we can find that minimum amount at some point.
I have it in an email here, but I'm not able to put my finger on it right now.
Okay. No, that's fine. Well, and then I've got one other thing, as long as we're on this, that I've been asking again for years is that we do commissioners' salaries before the budget is set, not after the fact. And we should be deciding that stuff very, very soon. Because we're cutting the budget to the bone, right? So we should know that stuff before we set a budget. I'm going to ask for it early enough this year. Another thing I've been asking for years.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Morgan, we do present a budget that we think is the minimum we need to provide our services. We do have a small contingency included in there. The commissioner's salary, whether they increase it or not, is pretty minor and can be accommodated with that. Having said that, it does not matter to the administration when you want to do that. You could do it. You could do it at any time, but your tradition has been to do it at the last meeting of the year.
I would like to see it on our next board meeting agenda.
If this board wants to do that, I'm happy to do that.
I don't know everybody's opinion. but it doesn't bother me when it happens.
To me, that's common sense when it should happen, before the budget's set.
Anybody else have any preference?
I've actually asked staff, I know I haven't been on this board as long as you, and I know it's not going to impact you next year, but for more information that would help us make that decision. And I don't see how they're going to get that by the next meeting. But if they can, then that's possible. But I don't have personally a problem with it being done. But I actually think they need to be doing some different information gathering for us to help us with that. So whenever they are able to do that, I don't have a problem with that. But
I suppose part of that can be getting that information that normally administration does for comparisons. Do a lot of the counties do it preliminary budget time, or I know you always give us what everybody, the local neighboring counties do.
Almost every county does their commissioner salary setting in December.
Okay.
But,
So you're getting whatever the most current information is at that time, but yeah, most of them do it at the end of the year.
We can get information ahead of time, but it will be then a year behind. But if that's, again, the wishes of the board, then, yeah.
That's what I would like to see. I would like to see it on our next board meeting.
Commissioner Clark?
there's some other information I'd like to see, and I don't know that this is the right venue to be asking for that right now, but I don't see how that's going to be able to take place until we have a better idea about what others are doing.
I've been trying to
I
ask
guess
for
one
this
thing
for
all
years.
of us can do better probably is, we have email, phone capabilities. If we have things we'd like to see, I think we can help administration by presenting that beforehand, so they have time, to get information we request.
Yeah. You won't adopt the preliminary budget at your next meeting either, and of course you don't adopt your final budget until the end of the year, so most any time is going to be before you do that final adoption. But again, it doesn't matter to me as long as we can meet your needs. It doesn't matter to me when we put that on an agenda. I totally understand the logic of doing it. It does impact the budget, so.
Yeah, and maybe before we get to Melissa, we're on, the Commissioner Bergen had some comments. So when you talk about the salaries, are you wanting like each individual, or do you want the range if I'm Human Services Aid 1 or whatever, this is the salary range they start with?
No, I would like each individual out there so that the public can see why they've got increases. The public can see, oh yeah, that person should have an increase, how underpaid they are in comparison to what's happening out in the private sector. And I know you're behind. All you need is a name, salary, and total benefit package. That should be out there for the public, for each individual of the public employees. These are employees of the public. They should be able to readily find that.
So maybe the question is, can that data be given to individuals if they request it?
That certainly would be public information. Steve can describe what we have available on the website today. And we had this conversation last year during budget time, and again, I said that's not something that we think is the best idea, and if the board wanted us to do that, we could. But we do have a significant amount of information available on the website, not by name, but by grade. And anyway, Steve, you can describe it better than I, what we have there.
Well, I think you're thinking of the point. I know we have it on the internal side. I can't remember, and I have to check with Jen if it's on the external side. It's on the list of things as we build our transparency page to expand. We do get data requests for, as you saw from issues with the Attorney's Office and CJCC on a lot of things. And we do get requests on employee salaries, sometimes individuals, sometimes everyone. And it is out there on the web for a few different companies that have put it out there.
Yeah, one of my concerns would be, it's being transparent, but we also don't want to spend a lot of staff time always up. I don't know what turnover is. We know the rate, so you can figure it out. But somebody's going to be there, always updating that website with people who resign, people who get hired. somebody's got to pay for doing all that as well.
There's so much stuff on the website. I think this would be a minor thing to add. It's always 1 year behind. Not a problem.
Commissioner Clark?
I know it's come up in the past too about how then people would understand that somebody who's worked here for 30 years, their salary might look different than somebody who's been here for 2 years, and it's within a classification and what benefits are in there. I think perhaps it might make some sense, because you have brought this up several times, for administration perhaps to come back and give us some idea about what could be done that isn't going to take up a lot of time, that actually does help, so that people know that what's the apples to apples kind of thing.
I suppose the bright side of it could be, if it's hard filling jobs, maybe if it looks like, it's a good thing to work for the county, maybe more people would apply. But it also might be a deterrent if the county, is lower on the pay scale than average.
Well, depending on the job, that's certainly possible. Again, I think your comments are good. I think, again, I don't know how long it would necessarily take. It does involve work for both payroll and HR as well as myself. And so I think, maybe we do some more discussions and we can certainly come back and talk to the board in more detail if you wish.
I just, as a department head, we're having difficulties retaining and attracting employees. So be careful of what you're doing and what the effects of that are. This was talked about last year. I know there's one commissioner that's interested in it, but there is effects to this that happens when you do stuff like this. So.
Okay.
I think every company is having that same difficulty right now. Private sector
private
also.
company would never do this.
No,
Yeah.
ever.
But that's different. The private company isn't being paid by the
But I'm competing
taxpayers.
with a private company, Jeff.
They're not being paid by the taxpayers.
Right.
The taxpayers aren't their employee.
Yeah, I can see where there's multiple ways to look at that.
Right.
You can also, could this create employee division between each other, because not all employees in a pool, whether it's administration, human services, know what each other makes. I mean, it's possible to request that, I'm guessing, because they're public employees, but.
So higher ed has to do something like this. Now, granted, that's a much bigger, the state system is a much bigger entity, so they have different staff who put this together. I don't know if there's some software that's available to do something like this. In all honesty, I'm not sure that that gets too many clicks also, and maybe that's one of the weighing, like how do we both make something available if it's asked versus spend a lot of time on it? Like how do you go about doing that and what the cost is? But there's at least something that's like that out there. And then how do you make it useful for people so you don't have to explain it away? So I think there's ways to get there. The question is, who does it? What does it look like? Can somebody call right now and say, I want to know how much so-and-so makes and how much time does that take? So.
Again, we do have people who do that on a regular basis.
Right. So. I mean, maybe to start with, while you figure this out, is there's a way to put on the website that if somebody has a question, here's who you contact, maybe to start with. But I think it does get to be a little tricky if you're counting even across bargaining units. We may not have the exact same. I know you try really hard. We try really hard to have the same benefits, but it might not be the same.
How about this? Maybe if we give administration till the next meeting or two to really
I think that's what I was trying to suggest before is why don't they come back
with something versus trying to iron this out right now.
Yeah. Right.
If that works.
Yep. Mr. Chair, I'm a little bit confused too, and sharing the information, how appropriate would be. Are you talking about what the person's being paid or what their salary is? You have people that are working overtime, people that are also taking perhaps parental leave, other situations like that. And for what basis is that important to the our constituent to know the exact dollar amount at which I'm being paid.
But I think it would be one snapshot in time. You can't keep every month.
The more layers and variables you do, the more complicated the system will be, the more explanation you'll need. Yes.
So just for example, if you're talking about, for example, posting teacher salaries, you post the salary that the teacher's getting paid to teach, or do you put the salary that they might be getting according to other services like coaching or after-school activities and things like that? You know, those are all factors that get...
You can go on a state website, every teacher's salary is out there, everyone.
But it'd be your base salary,
But it's the base salary.
Yeah. Which I suppose you could say January 1st, here's everybody that works for a county and here's what they make.
And that could be done also by posting the base salaries according to the pay scale.
Yeah, actually, I was just wondering if that might be good enough, what it would be for each step or each, I mean, how many years that you're in service per, I mean, it does get hard because some divisions, you have so many different classifications versus others. But if this isn't really about just trying to figure out what one human being is getting, and it's really about being transparent about what we're paying and what level we pay, you know, per classification and years of service, and that seems like a really important thing for the public to be able to see, perhaps versus the difference between Jane and Don and some division, because they wouldn't necessarily have seen the classifications about what that is, what's the difference. Then we wouldn't have to explain it away too.
Well, and if the information is just strictly, depends on what it's being used for, is it being used to justify, here's why the levy increased because salaries went up 3%, so the levy went up 3%. I mean, is that what we're trying to
Well, that's why I'm
justify?
wondering if you say that you have 10 people that are have this particular job, that are in this particular classification, and here's how it falls out to how much it is per person. Because I'm guessing part of this is also about, you know, tracking per year. Like how much does that look? I mean, granted, we say in the big picture, this is what the increases are, but for some, they might want to see some detail. That's why them coming back to us about it might be helpful.
Okay. I guess you heard what some of the discussion, so, you can bring something back, would be great.
That's right. All right. So I'm going to step aside and let Melissa do the human services performance measures, and then I'll finish up the rest.
All right, good morning. I hope you weren't having that discussion to avoid hearing about the human services performance measures, of which I'm going to repeat at this moment. So the first one is the mental health performance goal. This is the one that's the collaboration out of the Mental Health Steering Committee. We've had a lot of success with it. We had a pilot project in 2018 and 2019 to see if the community action team and the various activities that we're doing in our partnership with Centricare and the Sheriff's Office and the St. Cloud PD and community corrections and social workers in our social services division, whether it had any effect. We had significant savings, and not just savings in a financial way, but we had significant savings in terms of trauma to individuals and families. Because we no longer really have high utilizers in the system, so we know that saves dollars. So in the future years, in 2020 and beyond, what we switched to is actually tracking the savings because of what didn't happen. So there's a lot of ER visits that didn't happen, and a lot of like detox visits that didn't happen, and those are all savings for us and to the individual and families. So we're having success with that. The next one is targeted case management, and this is a good one. This is basically the services that social workers provide at least on a monthly or more basis, and it's to people with developmental disabilities, mental health, it's child protection and child welfare, the seniors, and it's a really super complicated formula to get reimbursement, so this is why we track it. I know this will not surprise you. It's difficult to do and follow all the state rules in order to get reimbursement for the services we do. And we've actually had a lot of success on improving our rate and getting reimbursement for this. And we have an increasing number of people who are seniors and people with disabilities over time. And we want to make sure that we're actually doing those services and then getting reimbursement for it. So we watch that number closely. And then finally, this one is really interesting to me. We don't have a lot of control over civil commitment numbers
totally. We have some control over it, but we keep this one in here because it's a good barometer of the health of the county overall. If you see our commitment numbers rising, you kind of know things aren't going that well. In Stearns County, we're one of the very few counties where the overall, our civil commitment budget's actually going down, and that's going down because of the significant collaborative effort we're doing in this area. Not just with the community action team and the co-responder models, but just because of our relationships across all of these areas that I just mentioned. So we're actually improving in this, but we don't have tremendous control. But a couple of years ago, the board did approve an FTE that we added into this. And what we do is we have social workers who really work to prevent people appropriately from not going into the deep end services, so providing services in the community so we don't have to pay that big bill. And then if people do go into the deep end services, we have a social worker and others that work on getting them out quicker so that it's not totally out of the county tax levy. So with that, I'm going to let Steve come back to the podium and discuss parks.
Wonderful job.
Thank you. So are you, Steve.
All right, so the next measure is for parks, and again, for parks, the measure that we use is the attendance rate based on when they do surveys, when they take collections at the stands at the entrances of parks, and have strips that they put on the trails to measure traffic there. And you can see there's a consistent rise in the attendance in our parks from 2018 through 2021. We certainly know that there was a good amount of people going to the parks during COVID. So you can see we've gone from 3,300 visits per 1,000 residents in 18 up to 3,900 in 2021. Or how I say this is that for every resident of Stearns County, there were 3 visits to a county park or county trail during the year. So that's a good sign that people are using the investment that we've created for them. Next, we move to property services. And so the first one is our assessors unit, which again is the ones that go out and assess properties for their value to help set the tax levies and how much our tax pool can be. And again, the requirement from the state is that we have to do a quintile or 20% of all the properties in any given year. And that's about, something that Jeff Johnson, when he was here, was always very good about making sure that our staff were doing. You can see that we were always, hitting the target at about 98% of the time. And if we compare that to how well the rest of the state was able to do. So the column on the right shows the rest of the state's ability to hit that 20% mark. And whereas we've consistently been 98 or 99%, the rest of the state has slowly improved from 91% of the target to, 95%. The next measure is looking at the recorder's office. And again, there's another state requirement that documents be recorded within 10 days of when they're dropped off. And we have to hit that mark 90% of the time in order to be declared in compliance with the state. And we have done that consistently except for 2020 and 2021 when, again, we had issues with turnover and we had not enough staff to keep up. And so in those years, as you can see, we were at 79% and then 85% in 2021. And in 2022, we're back to being full staffed in that office at this point. And so we're, again, at almost 100% compliance. Now we move over to the sheriff's office. We have a couple measures here. The first one is looking at automobile incidents. Specifically, the one I want to highlight is the top one, which is DUI arrests. So in 2020, again, when most people weren't traveling as much, we had 152 DUI arrests by the county sheriff. And in 2021, as restrictions were relaxing, that number went up to 227. And the number of traffic accidents that included fatalities in 2020 was 4, and again, doubled to 8 in 2021. And again, as I said before, about always wanting to improve and track, we'll continue to measure this longitudinally over time and add more years as we go forward. The second one here is looking at Part 1 and Part 2 crimes as they're reported to the state, again, as part of the state's Uniform Crime Report for all jurisdictions. And you can see here that in 2017 and 2018, the Part 1 crimes were 2,700 and then 1,518. And then in 2020, that number had fallen to 240, and just a slight tick up in 2021 to 289. And again, these are the most serious person crimes: murder, rape, robbery, burglary, and so on. The Part 2 crimes, which are more the lesser person crimes, are the fraud, vandalism, disorderly conduct. And again, there we were at 4,200 in 2017, over 5,000 in 18. And then in 2020, the number fell to just under 900, and then just over to 1,000 once we were in 2021.
Steve,
Yes.
just on that statistic, burglary, is that just theft? I mean, there's a difference between somebody taking a lawnmower out of my shed and murder, you know?
In terms of the definition of the crime, I'll have to turn to, and the sheriff's not here now. So
Okay, but I mean, but just burglary, you know, if it's just theft, you know, small items, if it gets lumped in there, that's something to me that's not a really particularly.
I understand, and I can certainly find the definition in the state report and send it to you.
Right.
Again, the state defines what's considered a type 1 or in their minds more serious versus the type 2 crimes.
Right.
And again, it's consistent because that data is then fed into the FBI reports for the nationwide crime report. So again, but no, that's a good question. I'll get you the answer.
Did stuff get pulled out that the numbers dropped so drastically?
No, we're required, as all police departments and sheriffs across the state, to report anything that fits those crimes. So if there's one of those crimes that happen, we're required to report it. And if we don't, I know years and years ago, we weren't, as with many jurisdictions, always great about being able to figure out how to report things. The state really leapt in and took them to task. So no, at this point,
kind of cleaned that up a little.
Everything's been cleaned up. The next one is response times. And again, this is, when people call dispatch, how long does it take for someone to arrive for a high priority call? And again, the dispatch center receives many types of calls, from ones that are immediately life-threatening to there's a barking dog down the street and please take care of it. So they do measure, again, for the high priority calls, how long it takes someone to get out to the scene. In 2019, the average time took 9.4 minutes. Again, turnover and issues, it took a little bit longer. It was 10 minutes in 2020, but back down to just about 9.5 minutes in 2021. So fairly consistent there in terms of response time, and considering, again, the size of the county, that's pretty good. The last screen for measures I want to go through is Veterans Office. And again, this is data that was compiled from the state report from the VA, as well as the numbers that Corey provided. The top line is looking at the veterans population. This is coming from the VA's census of how many veterans live in all counties in the state and the country. You can see in 2018, there were just under 10,000 veterans who lived in Stearns County. And by 2021, that number has fallen to 9,300 as the population has aged out or passed on or moved. And so the next line looks at the total amount of client appointments or walk-ins. And again, this is Corey's staff doing outreach. Certainly in his office, working with clients from the VA, because having the VA in town adds a workload that a lot of jurisdictions don't have by having the VA there and some of their residents coming to Corey for help, as well as people from other counties who sometimes come to Corey for help because they think they can get service faster through Stearns County's office than their own hometown. So you can see the numbers were about 3,000, 3,300 pre-COVID. During COVID, the numbers fell off to 1,900 and then 1,600. According to Corey, as we talked earlier this year, numbers are going back up as people are wanting more services and are more engaged and active. I want to just take a look down at the bottom line is that, and the number of veterans may be decreasing, but the number of claim submissions is going up. As you can see, in 2019, there were 1,000 claim submissions through the Stearns County office, and last year there was over 1,600. That's a pretty big increase for only a 3-year period, and it's again showing that our veterans are reaching out and we are helping to get them the services and benefits that they're entitled to. But as state and federal systems change, each claim takes more time, and so that is something that is concerning, that the number of people to serve may be decreasing, but the time it takes to serve each one is longer as things become more complicated. But the bottom line on the bottom line of the slide indicates that the results are still good for the veterans of the community, that we were able to bring in $51 million into the local economy for all the veterans, for all the benefits that they received in 2018, and that number has grown to $65.4 million in 2021. So again, the veterans are, I think, being well served by the department. That's all I had for the performance measures for this time. And Again, if there's questions, as I've told you all in past years, you know how to find me, and many of you do ask questions as we go through the remainder of the year on budget. So with that, I'll stand for anything else you have.
Anybody have any further questions? If not, I'm sure there's more to come.
Yes, there is.
All right, thank you. All right. Last but not least, environmental services.
Now, my knees are stiff, so I apologize. It takes me a little longer to get up here. We have 4 items for you today. They are all related to water planning. Cole Lowen is here to go through those items. So we will have things from the Sauk River Watershed District, Mississippi St. Cloud Watershed, and the North Fork of the Crow River Watershed District. So Cole is right behind me, ready to roll.
Thank you.
Pardon me.
You can say good
look
morning.
at that. Morning, afternoon, Mr. Chair. Cole Lowen, Environmental Specialist with Environmental Services Department. First time on your agenda is the Sauk River Grant Agreement, followed closely by the second agreement, the Fiscal Agent Agreement. Both of these are for the Stearns County to act as the fiscal agent on behalf of that watershed collaborative that was established last year. Duties are listed in the Fiscal Agent Agreement. Just a quick overview of what's going to happen under that grant. There's going to be some feasibility studies, some design work done for some targeted subwatersheds where there's a lot of nutrients leaving the landscape and getting to the Sauk River. There's going to be some outreach and priority watersheds such as targeted field days. And then there's going to be a host of on-the-ground water quality practices, water and sediment control basins, cover crops, shoreline stabilizations, all in the targeted areas as called for in the Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan. So we would recommend the grant agreements moved first, and then the fiscal agreements move second, because the grant agreement is an exhibit of the fiscal agent agreement.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve the grant agreement with Bowser. You wanna like?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner
second
Clark.
that.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
And then the next would be the fiscal agency agreement that needs to be executed as well.
Okay, yep, and I think we talked about that. We agreed to do it, so in order for them to receive the money, it has to come to us as the fiscal agent. Correct?
Yes, and the policy committee has asked for Stearns County to act as the fiscal.
Yep. Yeah, because the grant prior to this is the base funding from Bowser, correct?
Correct.
So in order to get that base funding, we have to go through these steps.
Correct.
So I'd be looking for a motion to approve Stearns County as the fiscal agent.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay,
Go ahead,
second from
Commissioner
Commissioner
Morgan, did you
Clark.
want to?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Would you like me just to continue,
Sure,
Mr.
just
Chair?
keep
Okay.
right on going.
So next is the Mississippi River St. Cloud Planning Agreement. So just a quick recollection, the state is shifting the paradigm of how water resource planning works in the state to these comprehensive watershed approaches. We've already completed 2 for that affect Stearns County, the North Fork and the Sauk. The Mississippi St. Cloud has finally reached the point where they are ready to execute the memorandum of agreement amongst the partners to develop the comprehensive watershed management plan for that area. So that is what's under consideration for the board today, is to move that
And Mr.
execution
Chair?
forward.
Okay, Commissioner Clark.
I'll move that, and I just really want to thank Brenda for all the work she's done on this, really helping the other counties understand why we're able to do this with an agreement versus a joint powers agreement. It's been significant and substantial. I think that I'm going to use those 2 separately, and Cole, I want to thank you too. We're on the beginning of the journey. It does mention also confirming we don't need to confirm appointment because I've already been appointed. So I will move the approving the plan.
Okay, we have a
Collaborative
motion
agreement.
by Commissioner Clark. Do we have a second? Commissioner Lensmeyer, it looks like a second.
I pretty much wore myself out talking about the voter fraud.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Morgan. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And the last one, Cole?
The last one, believe it or not, we have reached the 5-year mark of the North Fork Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan. That means it is time for the normal amendment proceeding for these water plans. A draft amendment has been produced by that collaborative group, and the action that's being asked is to support initiating the plan amendment process for the plan. Basically, the policy committee is asking all member boards to indicate you support moving forward with this amendment. You're not actually adopting the amendment today.
Not adopting the amendment?
No, what you're doing today is you're indicating support, and then that will be sent to Bowser, and then Bowser has to actually indicate they support the adoption, and then it comes back to the board. Yes, it's convoluted.
Could you address some of the issues that were brought by Mr. Fuchs in the early in the meeting in the public forum?
Can we finish this and then?
Yeah, I'm not
because this would be
it's totally separate from his issue.
Yeah, that's a total separate issue.
Yeah, because I don't quite understand that how it's separate.
Okay,
with the whole.
and I apologize, I wasn't here for the public forum.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, great.
So at this point, we're just looking to approve support so that they can submit it to Bowser, so Bowser can send it back, so we can make a final decision. Well, we're one of the entities.
Yes, one of the entities, correct.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Persky. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I'll just say one thing, because I go to the Sauk River Water, I'm on a policy committee there, and Cole has been a tremendous asset, in my opinion. When you're working with multiple soil and water districts, counties, I mean, Cole has been able to answer those questions and kind of get everybody back, onto the same page, because this is a long process. I mean, we started this in 2018 just for the Sauk River, and over time, people kind of forget what was agreed to and what was not. And Cole has always, at least I've seen, come up there and answered the questions and got it done. So thank you for that, Cole.
Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
I was a little surprised how long it took us to get to the point that this agreement, the St. Cloud, Mississippi Riverside Cloud, took to come here. So I appreciate all of the work that you, Commissioner Morgan, and others have done on the other ones. And I do want to thank you, because otherwise this could have been 3 more months before it came before us. So thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Shelley,
I just want to comment too. I appreciate all the work that's going on here with the watershed. Switching over that one watershed, one plan has been difficult, but the reality is water does not know jurisdictions. And I think we all should pretty much agree how precious water is as a resource, because as we were out in Denver during the convention, we see those folks that are struggling for water. And, all we can do to protect that resource is important. I wish it wasn't as expensive and as time enduring that it is, but, and the arguments that we have in going about keeping it clean, but it is a precious resource, and I appreciate the work going into this.
Yeah, we don't appreciate it much until it's not there.
Yeah. Right.
And we're fortunate here because we have, obviously, all kinds of water. Anybody have anything for Shelley?
Mr. Chair, did you want me to address Commissioner Morgan's question, or do you want me to bring that back?
If you can. Yeah.
In general, Mr. Fuchs's question really relates to the determination of benefits and how much he's been assessed within that watershed district on the county ditch. So I think he has some other concerns. I don't know all of them. He said he was going to provide me some information. He had questions related to management of the watershed, and I know that the Board of Water and Soil Resources does address that. So we will be in contact with each other, and I will help him get the right people to answer those questions.
Is it true that he was assessed $95,000 in the redetermination?
I don't know the answer to that. He certainly could have.
He probably has an idea.
Well, first of all, North Fork River Watershed District is a separate organization.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
You're 100% with him. You have no control over what they do.
Exactly.
Okay. So just so, so we're all clear on that.
Yep.
You appoint members to that. So
Right.
keep that stuff in mind when you're appointing members. I don't know exactly his situation, but when they redetermine benefits and you get a value, that doesn't mean you're assessed that. That's used to figure out how much of a project you're going to pay. So if he got, a bill or assessed a certain amount and the value is this amount, that gets divided out to figure what percent of the bill you get. That's what I'm assuming he's talking about.
Yeah. And it also takes into account if you have a lot of land in that ditch system, your portion of the assessment is going to be greater because you have more feet on that ditch system.
But the reason I question is because I can see some of these same issues coming up with Two Rivers with that redetermination.
Gitchell's Creek,
Yes.
they're higher than that even for some of these land property owners. But
You're
That
right,
will come
Commissioner
into
Mergen, is some people want everything done, some people want nothing done. So, you're not going to make everybody happy.
But if that's the actual bill, that can break some people.
What's happened over time with watersheds and ditch projects, et cetera, is a tremendous escalation in soft costs. They have nothing to do with turning dirt. And it's made those projects very expensive. So I think in our efforts, again, to make things fair and equitable, et cetera, we might have made it worse, but we gave it a shot.
Mr. Chair, and also, I mean, there are things we're bound by ditch law. We have no control over much of that. And the way things developed 100 years ago in developing tillable soils from wetlands and pasture lands, as it's come as things have changed, that now those ditches need to be put back into better shape and conditions that they are, as people are losing tillable portions. And of course, that comes at the expense of those folks that, again, are in that agreement to have that benefit. So,
and I can say as someone who attends 2 different watershed monthly board meetings, what the county does by far is, I don't want to say above and beyond, but they can do things a little more efficiently than the watersheds, because the watersheds, based on ditch law, if somebody comes, they have to follow these procedures, which the county does too, but I think Chad Martini's group can react a little, they can do smaller things quicker than the procedural things that the watersheds have to go through. So I know Chad's department, just on ditch 28, in 25, I think by Avon, they've gone above and beyond to try and get the situation rectified in a least costly manner. But again, the soft costs are what they are, and that's what drives the price up. So with that, if there's no more questions on environmental services, we can move to issues by commissioners. Lee, do you have
I've had
something?
enough.
Okay. Commissioner Mergen?
I just would like an update from Mike on the investigation into a major political party involving themselves in our nonpartisan county commissioner elections. Where you're at with that
Mr. Chair,
investigation?
Commissioner Mergen, I was able to ascertain from the party's website, the local party's website, that it's part of their bylaws that they will lend support to candidates even at the local level. And as much as, I don't want to see that happen, I've written articles and given talks about keeping partisan politics away from local government, but I didn't feel like there's a need for me to do much else there other than acknowledge that that's part of their bylaws. I don't know if they've been changed recently, so I don't really have any more information than that. I didn't think that it was my role to inject myself into that process. So that's as far as I took it, Commissioner. If we think I should do more, I certainly could, but that's it. That's as far as I took it.
I'll probably be pursuing it on my own then. I got some other options.
Do you have anything else?
That's it.
Okay, Commissioner Persky?
To Jeff's point, one thing that I've been pleased about this board is keeping our party politics off our agendas and off of our decision-making and the way we interact with one another. We got enough trouble agreeing with each other as individuals, then we want to bring the party part into it as well. One thing that I am pleased is that there seems to be at least an understanding that when we do finish, we do have a respect for each other's opinion, and that I feel is good. And again, that's, I think, because of the characters of each and every one of you. And so I appreciate serving with you folks. One thing, I just want to thank Randy for his presentation today on the elections. Your staff, I think, does a great job in doing that. And it's not a perfect system, but by all means, we can only strengthen our democracy by allowing people to participate.
Commissioner Clark?
Thank you. One thing to add, Commissioner Mergen, you may want to contact the other major party too, because apparently they've made donations now to some local candidates. So I too would love it if everybody else would just stay out of it and that we could just focus on each other. But it appears that both political parties are doing some version of support for some local candidates. And I too just appreciate the fact that we all try to find the best solutions that we can here, and anybody else who would get into office, I hope that they work with us to find good local solutions that aren't based on outside groups as well. And just to remind everybody, on this board, the AMC Policy Conference will be coming up next month, the 15th and 14th and 15th. There's some meetings on Wednesday, and then we're on Thursday and Friday. And our participation in each of those policy groups really does make a difference in what the agenda will be coming up. So I hope everybody's planning on participating.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I know I'm going to be meeting with the Stearns County Fair Board, I think in October. And I know at the fair, they kind of maybe talked to me a little bit about they need to do some improvements to some of the facilities out there. And I think if I remember back more than a few years back, we can assist them with like a loan or something like that. So I'll be meeting with them in October, and I kind of suggested that if I can get in contact with somebody with the county in case we have to put something together for them. But first, they have a couple of buildings that need modifications and updates, which they brought up. I think I brought it up probably 5 years ago, and then it kind of leveled off because they got some additional funding. But so that's one thing that try and get a better handle on them. Reach out to Mike or somebody in case they.
And as you know, we've done that. Well, I think we did it with the fair long before my time, but we've also done it with the Historical Museum too.
Yep.
Arrangement like that.
And then lastly, I came in the other day and I think there was 70 years of service documents that, I signed. And, I think a lot of times there's a lot of staff that does work. I mean, it was from 5 years. I think the last one was 35 years, and I know Jeff Johnson had over 40. I mean, a lot of these people we never hear about because they just come to work and do their job and, and make it work for the county. And I think publicly sometimes we need to also thank them for everything they do, and some of them are sitting here even. So with that, thanks for that. And I have nothing else, so we'll call this meeting adjourned.